Chapter 884. His tone was bleak, as if he was hurt by her words. You don't want to be alone with me? I just want to spend more time with you. She knew that he was doing this on purpose, but she still felt sorry for him. She stroked his hair and explained, No, it's already so late. You should rest. You still have to go to the office tomorrow. He insisted, I'll leave after you fall asleep. She said helplessly, But I have insomnia. I can't sleep. It's okay. I have a way to make you fall asleep faster. The corners of his lips curled up and his bright eyes stared at her lips with ill intentions. He intertwined his breath with hers. He kissed her until she was dizzy and her whole body was soft. She felt really tired. She thought that Shinja had become naughty. Her eyelids couldn't hold up anymore, and she gently closed them. Baby, sleep well. A feather-light kiss brushed across her forehead, and a gentle voice entered her dream. Zuexiang Restaurant was a very stylish private restaurant in Ing City. There was a limit to the number of customers they received every day. Naturally, the dishes here were also famous for being delicious. In the antique private room, an elegant fragrance lingered in the air. Shenja was wearing a high-end tailor-made suit. He sat upright and his casual movements revealed elegance. His handsome and cold facial features, sword-like eyebrows, and proud and handsome nose bridge were all perfect masterpieces of God. When Ji Bowen walked into the private room with his daughter and saw this scene, he nodded in his heart. But judging from his appearance, Shenja was indeed a rare good man who was worthy of Yuchi. So, uncle. Shenja stood up and greeted him politely. After Ji Bowen nodded, his smiling gaze turned to Jiuchi. His words and actions revealed his excellent upbringing. Ji Bowen's satisfaction with him increased, but he didn't show it on his face. He said lightly, Sorry to keep you waiting. Not long. I just arrived. Shenja didn't say much, but Ji Bowen could feel his sincerity and respect. He personally poured a cup of tea and presented it to Ji Bowen. Uncle, the Tiguanyin here is not bad. Try it. Tiguanyin was Ji Bowen's favorite tea. Jiuchi saw the satisfaction in her father's eyes and couldn't help but smile. She blinked at Shinja in appreciation. She thought that with Shinja's personality, he wouldn't try to please her father. She didn't expect him to do it. She was happy that he respected her father so much. Although Shinja and Ji Bowen did not talk much, the atmosphere was surprisingly harmonious. After dinner, Jiuchi saw that her father wanted to speak but stopped. She guessed that he wanted to talk to Shinja alone, so she smiled and got up. Dad, Aja, I'm going outside to make a call. You guys can talk. After Jiuchi left, Ji Bowen's face became serious. He stared at Shinja and went straight to the point. Shinja, do you really like my daughter? Shinja's lips curled up slightly. I won't marry anyone else. These simple words came out of his mouth, but they sounded powerful. Ji Bowen was unmoved. His gaze was deep and dark as he said in a deep voice, I can't let my daughter come to any harm. What makes you think that you can protect her for the rest of her life? In an instant, Shinja's aura suddenly changed. His shocking eyes carried a dangerous message, and the space between his brows was dyed with a peerless arrogance and nobility. It was as if the entire world had submitted to him. He didn't say much, but slowly spat out two words, I can. Every person with power had their own kind of aura. Ji Bowen could feel that kind of aura from him at this moment. It was arrogant and unruly, cold and domineering, and noble like a king. This was the real Shinja, who stood at the top of everyone. Ji Bowen looked at him deeply. I don't want my daughter to marry into a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. Do you understand what I mean? Ji Bowen was not an easy person to deal with. Last night, Yuchi told him about her relationship with Shinja. He used his connections and even old friends that he had not contacted for a long time to find out about the Shen family. In the end, his guess was confirmed. The Shen family was not as harmonious as it seemed on the surface. Shenja was very capable to be able to live safely until today. Shenja's gaze changed slightly. His expression was solemn as he said solemnly, I won't let my woman suffer with me. Before Chichi marries me, I will deal with those problems. Remember your promise. When Jiuchi returned to the private room, their conversation had already ended. Although she did not know what they had talked about, she realized that her father's attitude towards Shinja had changed. He was no longer the polite and distant person he had been in the beginning. Instead, he was treating Shinja with the gentleness of an elder towards a younger generation. He was even in a good mood and allowed the two of them to continue their date. Of course, they could not stay out all night. Jiyuchi's hand was held by Shinja as she watched her father's car drive away. She asked curiously, "My father seems to like you a lot. What did you talk about?" Shinja raised his hand and tucked the hair by her cheek behind her ear. The corner of his lips curved. "You have a very good father." Then, he repeated their conversation to her word for word. Jiyuchi's heart warmed. She had always been glad that she had a father who loved her. Her eyes sparkled as she said childishly, "My father is naturally the best father in the world." Shinja's slightly cold fingers brushed her nose as he said seriously, "Your husband is also the best husband in the world." The slightly sad atmosphere was broken by him and only left with laughter. Her eyes were curved and her smile was as beautiful as a peach. She held his cheeks with both hands and teased, "Old Lady Wang is selling melons and praising her own melons. Young Master Shin, your skin has become thicker again." His handsome face was rubbed out of shape by her, but he did not stop her from rubbing it. He was good-natured and allowed her to rub it. His tone was as serious as ever. "Since you like my face so much, then kiss it." She laughed until she was out of breath. "Hey, is there a cause and effect between the two?" "Of course there is. Just like this." As soon as his voice fell, his cold lips had already landed on her face. He whispered softly in her ear, "I like it so much that I can't help but want to take a bite." On the streets at night, neon lights flickered. At the intersection where people were coming and going, a tall and handsome figure held a petite girl in his arms. He protected her in his embrace. Other than him, no one else could see her blushing face that was as beautiful as a flower. Even acquaintances who passed by could not recognize Jiyuchi, who was tightly hugged by Shinja. When Yi Zissou and Xiao Yihan passed by them, they only glanced at them indifferently before returning all their attention to Xiao Yihan. Ever since that ambiguous morning, Xiao Yihan had been looking for all kinds of reasons to ask Yi Zissou out. Yi Zissou was already physically and mentally exhausted from being tortured by Yushio. She had also completely lost all hope for Jiang Tianhao and was in a period of emotional emptiness. Coincidentally, a man who could give her warmth and make her happy had appeared. Of course, she would not reject him. At first, she would still pretend to be reserved and evade him. However, when he had several coincidental encounters with her in the shopping mall, campus, and bars, she allowed him to carefully hold her hand. Xiao Yihan took Yi Zissou to an extremely lively bar. The colorful lights were flashing and sexy dancers were strip-teasing on the poles. A group of wild men below the stage were hooting. The atmosphere was hot and fiery. For a beauty like Yi Zissou, even if she had a male companion by her side, when she walked into the bar, she was like a little white rabbit walking into a pack of wolves. She attracted a lot of hot gazes. The naked desire in their eyes almost tore her apart. Yi Zissou had never been to such a daring place. She was a little afraid in her heart, but more than that, she was faintly excited. She suddenly felt like she had stepped into a new world. That kind of life where she was the center of attention and sought after by men made her blood begin to boil. Xiao Yihan turned his head and saw the fire hidden in her eyes. The corners of his lips curled up mockingly. The so-called White Lotus goddess, after taking off her outer clothes, was nothing more than a loose woman. The wild music started to play. All kinds of men and women on the dance floor swayed their waists and buttocks in the wind. There were already men and women who could not help but hide in the corner and make out discordant sounds. Yi Zissou and Xiao Yihan were also on the dance floor. They were using the wild dance to release their emotions. Unknowingly, the deafening electronic music turned into soothing music. Xiao Yihan stretched out his long arm and pulled Yi Zissou into his embrace. She was still in a state of excitement. Her beautiful eyes were sparkling and her cheeks were rosy, just like a cute apple. Xiao Yihan's eyes darkened. He slowly leaned over and kissed her lips. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but he held her hand tightly and deepened the kiss. At this moment, Yi Zisu's hearing became more sensitive. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart beating faster. She could also hear the sounds of couples kissing around her. Her heart trembled. The feeling of her blood boiling came back. She no longer resisted. She slowly closed her eyes and gave in to him. The ambiguous sounds in her ears became clearer and clearer. It was as if she was in heaven. When Xiao Yihan picked her up horizontally and stuffed her into the back seat of the car, she suddenly opened her eyes and hugged his neck to stop him from taking another step. Her bright eyes were filled with shyness and her voice was seductive. "Brother Yihan, I'm sorry. I'm already married. I'm not worthy of you." Xiao Yihan's scorching lips rubbed against her neck. His deep voice was filled with desire. "Zisu, I won't allow you to say such things. In my heart, you are the purest. You won't understand how happy I was when you were willing to look at me. Zisu, I love you." His scorching breath sprayed on her neck. His rough fingers rubbed against her skin. As she was pressed against his chest, she could clearly hear his intense heartbeat. A flame ignited in her heart and burned her body. She really wanted to follow her instincts and accept his love. However, she still remembered her mother's words. If a man obtained it too easily, he would not cherish it. Thus, she gritted her teeth and pushed him away resolutely. She frantically adjusted her clothes. "Brother Yihan, we can't do this. I should go home." Xiao Yihan's handsome face was abnormally red. He took a deep breath and suppressed his desire. He said in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry. I lost control just now. I'll send you home." As he spoke, he combed her hair with his fingers. No need. Yi Zisu was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. She frantically avoided his fingers. "I'll go home on my own." She quickly opened the car door. Just as she was about to jump out of the car, Xiao Yihan's deep and sad voice was heard. "Are you afraid of me?" Her body trembled. She softly said, "No, I just don't want my husband to misunderstand." Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 885. Xiao Yihan grabbed her arm and said angrily, "Who does Jiang Tianhao think he is? Since he let you down, why do you still care about what he thinks? Zisu, you're a good woman who deserves to be cherished by any man. Why do you still want to be with him and torture yourself?" Her back was facing him, and her body was trembling slightly. The next second, her tears fell onto the back of his hand. It was icy cold, and he couldn't care less anymore. He suddenly pulled her into his embrace and howled with heartache, "Silly, silly. Why do you have to torture yourself like that?" Finally, someone understood her grievances. Finally, someone felt sorry for her. She couldn't help but cry. She turned around and threw herself into his arms, crying like a child. He caressed her back again and again. He didn't say any comforting words, but she didn't feel lonely anymore. Her eyelids suddenly felt cold. His warm lips gently kissed away the tears on her face, bit by bit, full of tenderness. He whispered softly in her ear, "Don't cry, baby. I'll protect you from now on." "No, it's not worth it. Brother Yihan, I don't deserve to be treated like that by you." She shook her head with tears streaming down her face. Her long eyelashes were stained with tears, and her big, watery eyes were like a bright lake. "Silly girl, you're very good. You deserve my wholehearted treatment." He kissed her forehead. His movements were extremely gentle, as if he was treating a priceless treasure. "Forget about me. I'm already married." Yi Zisu choked with sobs and couldn't speak. She leaned into his embrace and sobbed softly. His voice was very soft in her ear. "I fell in love with someone. She just happened to be married. I'm not afraid of being cursed. I just don't want her to ignore me." The night scene outside the car window was bustling with people. Yi Zisu's lonely heart was filled at this moment. It was as if thousands of peach blossoms had bloomed in her heart, fragrant and resplendent. In the end, Xiao Yihan ignored Yi Zisu's objections and drove her to the entrance of her neighborhood. Before she got out of the car, Xiao Yihan gently kissed her on the cheek. Fortunately, it was late at night and there was no one around. She was not worried about being seen by others. She shyly pursed her lips and whispered, "Brother Yihan, drive carefully." Xiao Yihan brushed her lips with his finger and smiled gently. He opened the car door for her in a gentlemanly manner and leaned against the car as he watched her enter the neighborhood. Yi Zixu took a few steps and couldn't help but turn back. Seeing the handsome man standing under the light, her lips curved. She turned around and walked towards the elevator in a good mood. She did not expect to bump into Jiang Tianhao at the entrance of the elevator. A trace of panic flashed through her heart. She quickly walked forward, hugged his arm, and smiled. "Hubby." Jiang Tianhao's eyes were deep and dark. The corners of his lips curled up stiffly. "Wifey, it's so late. Where did you go?" Yi Zixu buried her face in his arm and could not see his gloomy eyes. She pouted coquettishly. "I went to a classmate's birthday party. I even mentioned it to you this morning. How could you forget?" Jiang Tianhao's expression became more and more strange, but his tone was normal. "I was too busy. I actually forgot about it. Wifey, did you drive back?" Yi Zixu said coquettishly, "No, a classmate sent me back." "Was it a guy or a girl?" He suddenly lifted her chin with his finger, jealousy written all over his face. She laughed softly. "Of course it was a female classmate. Hubby, are you jealous?" His furrowed brows slowly relaxed and he smiled. "Of course. My wife is so beautiful. There must be a lot of people coveting you. How can I not watch over you? You're so annoying. The elevator is here. Hubby, let's go in." Jiang Tianhao's eyes drooped slightly as he followed her into the elevator. His hands hanging by his side clenched into fists. Birthday party, female classmate. What a good excuse. Did she think that he was blind and could not see her getting out of a luxury car? That man was so attentive to her. Even from a distance, he could tell that their relationship was not ordinary. If she was not guilty, why would she lie? That B*TCH actually dared to betray him. He would let her know the price of betraying him. That night, Jiang Tianhao was so passionate that it was scary. He did not wait for her to prepare and forcefully entered her. She was in so much pain that she almost cried. She begged him to be gentler. Although he said comforting words, his movements became more intense. He was like a ferocious beast, devouring her over and over again. The tearing pain made her unable to feel the slightest bit of happiness. She curled up under him and sobbed. He roared, and after venting, he hugged her in his arms. His right arm wrapped around her neck with great strength. His pitch-black eyes were cold, but his voice was low and gentle. "I'm sorry, wife. I lost control just now. Does it hurt a lot?" Yi Zixu cried like a tearful person. She never knew that being forced to do such a thing would be so painful. She hit his chest resentfully. "Well, I told you to be gentler. It hurts so much." All right. Baby, don't cry. Let me see." Jiang Tianhao ignored her struggles and lifted the blanket covering her body. Sure enough, that place was already muddy, torn, and swollen. It was like a delicate flower that had been ruthlessly ravaged. It was pitiful, but also had a kind of miserable beauty. Suddenly, a tyrannical pleasure rose from his bones. Destroy her. This thought flooded into his mind like a tide. The wind rolled and surged wildly. He suddenly clenched his fists and closed his eyes, temporarily suppressing his desire to torture her. He took out a tube of ointment from the drawer and carefully applied it on her. There was no nitpicking about the feelings of guilt and pity. It was as perfect as the 24 filial piety husband in the past. On this night, Jiang Tianhao seemed to have discovered a new world and stepped into a new world. He released the violent and bloodthirsty in his bones and tried new things on Yi Zixu. He began to be passionate about cross-dressing games and would even use sex toys to liven things up. Yi Zixu was tortured to death by him every time. She couldn't believe how cruel this well-dressed man in front of her was. In just a few days, she lost a lot of weight. Every night, the thing she was most afraid of was Jiang Tianhao walking into the bedroom and taking out his latest game. She shivered and cried for mercy, but he was unmoved and still tortured her. After it was over, he was as gentle as before and sincerely begged for her forgiveness. Sex/violence. This word circled in Yi Zixu's mind. However, she was too embarrassed to say it out loud and didn't dare to tell anyone. She was glorious in front of others, but in private, she swallowed her bitterness into her stomach. She became more and more afraid and didn't want to persist anymore. The idea of divorcing Jiang Tianhao became stronger and stronger. Finally, she asked Xiao Yihan out. This was the first time the two of them met after Xiao Yihan expressed his feelings for her. The two of them agreed to meet at a high-class clubhouse. Yi Zixu was wearing a high-collared shirt and black high-waisted pants, wrapping herself up tightly. When Xiao Yihan saw her, he frowned and said with pity, "Zixu, why have you lost so much weight? Are you sick?" Yi Zixu forced a smile. "No, I'm fine. Brother Yihan, let me pour you a cup of tea." Under Xiao Yihan's suspicious gaze, her slender fingers grasped the purple clay teapot and slowly poured the tea. As she poured the tea, the red marks on her wrist naturally appeared. She didn't notice it and smiled slightly. "Brother Yihan, please have some tea." Xiao Yihan didn't take the teacup. He stared coldly at her wrist. In the next second, he grabbed her arm and, under her panicked gaze, quickly rolled up her sleeve. At that moment, it was a ghastly sight. Her fair arm was covered with red marks. His face was ashen. Ignoring her cries of alarm, he rolled up her other sleeve. The same red marks covered her entire arm. His eyes instantly burned with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "Did Jiang Tianhao do this?" Yi Zixu's long eyelashes fluttered. Sparkling tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes. She hurriedly turned her head and wiped her tears. She said stubbornly, "It wasn't him. I accidentally fell. Brother Yihan, don't misunderstand." "Fell?" Xiao Yihan was so angry that he laughed and said sternly, "What a fall. I really couldn't tell that you were capable of such a thing. What's so good about that jerk Jiang Tianhao that makes you treat him like this? Don't say any more. I beg you, don't say any more." Yi Zixu covered her face with both hands. She broke down and cried. She cried very sadly, as if she wanted to pour out all the sadness she had been feeling for the past few days. His slender arms pulled her into his broad chest. Xiao Yihan pressed her head against his chest. His heart ached as he said, "You silly girl. He hurt you so badly, but you still don't want to leave him. Do you have to humiliate yourself like this and make my heart ache?" The person in his arms shook her head vigorously. She sobbed sadly. Her tears wet his clothes. He sighed and gently stroked her hair. "Zixu, marry me. I'll protect you. I won't let you get hurt again." Yi Zixu buried her head in his arms and sobbed, "I've already been married. Don't say things like you're not worthy of me." He hurriedly interrupted her. He lifted her head and held her tear-stained face. He said seriously, "I don't care what you were like in the past. I just want to have your future." The man in front of her was extraordinarily handsome. His expression was serious, and every word he said was powerful. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. Her tears fell even harder. Her lips trembled slightly. She asked in a deceitful and apprehensive manner, "You really don't dislike me? How could I dislike you?" Xiao Yihan sounded helpless. It was as if he was facing an unreasonable child. He stroked her hair and said dotingly, "I can't wait to love you. Brother Yihan." Yi Zixu was touched and threw herself into his arms. She hugged his waist tightly as if she was hugging her last life-saving straw. The two of them expressed their feelings to each other. In a moment of excitement, they couldn't help but be intimate for a while. When Xiao Yihan saw the scars on her body, his eyes were filled with anger. He couldn't wait to fight with Jiang Tianhao. He was seething with anger. Yi Zixu naturally enjoyed it. She hugged him tightly and comforted him with soft words. The two of them confessed their feelings to each other. Xiao Yihan took pity on the scars on her body and didn't go any further. This made her fall in love with him even more. She felt that he was sincerely treating her well. It was already past 9 o'clock. Jiang Tianhao was working overtime at the company and hadn't returned yet. Yi Zixu leaned against the headboard. Her eyes were slightly downcast as she thought about the divorce. Jiang Tianhao used her to climb up the social ladder and caused her to be so miserable. She wouldn't let him off. Before the divorce, she wanted to take revenge and take back everything he had. These things originally belonged to her. Attention, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 886. Honey, I'm back. Jiang Tianhao pushed open the door and came in. He was holding his coat with one hand and tugging at his tie with the other. There was a hint of tiredness between his brows. Yi Zissou hurriedly got off the bed and helped him untie his tie. She smiled gently. Hubby, you've worked hard. Have you eaten? Yes, I've eaten. I'm going to take a shower first. You should sleep early. Jiang Tianhao hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. This meant that he was going to let her go tonight. Yi Zissou secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Her smile became even gentler. I'm not sleepy yet. I'll wait for you. Jiang Tianhao said, okay, and turned to walk to the bathroom. Yi Zissou took out clean underwear and a bathrobe from the closet and sent him to the door. Yi Zissou lay down on her side and closed her eyes to sleep. Her mind was still thinking about things. When Jiang Tianhao finished showering and hugged her from behind, her body suddenly trembled. This was a kind of instinctive fear that she could no longer control. As if he didn't notice, he pulled her into his arms and gently kissed her hair. He whispered, "Good night, honey." "Good night." Only at this moment did her tense body relax. In the darkness, she opened her eyes and coldly stared at a certain spot. Her bright eyes burned with the flames of hatred. Jiang Tianhao also opened his eyes and stared at the back of her head with a complicated expression. This afternoon, Ji Bowen called him to the office and asked him about his and Yi Zissou's life. He also asked him to treat Yi Zissou well and not let her suffer. He agreed to everything. He also realized that he couldn't mistreat Yi Zissou too much. Otherwise, if she couldn't take it and ran to Ji Bowen to complain, it would definitely cause Ji Bowen to be dissatisfied with him. Alas, he had to endure humiliation for the greater good. The woman in his arms, it would be better to slowly teach her a lesson. After that, Yi Zissou's life got a lot better. Although Yu Xiu was still bothering her, at least Jiang Tianhao was no longer tormenting her. She had time to catch her breath. She discussed with Xiao Yihan that they would not divorce for the time being. She wanted to destroy Jiang Tianhao first. Although Jiang Tianhao was a black-hearted person, he still had real talent and knowledge. Therefore, in just a few months, he was able to shine in the marketing department. As the company's key training target, the task of negotiating between G Group and Global Department Store Group naturally fell on his head. For this reason, Ji Bowen specially called him to the office and told him that he must prepare well and complete the task well. The board of directors attached great importance to this negotiation. If he did well, he would soon be promoted to deputy director of the marketing department. With such a good opportunity to climb up the ranks, Jiang Tianhao naturally would not give up. Global Department Store was the largest department store group in the United Kingdom. They had department stores in all the developed countries. Almost all the clothing brands that could enter Global Department Store were world famous. Global Department Store had an unwritten rule that every year, they would remove the clothing brands with the worst sales in the mall and replace them with brands that they liked. This year, Global Department Store was targeting China's clothing brands. They planned to pick out the most promising brand from China's clothing and bring it into Global Department Store. When the news came out, the entire domestic clothing industry was in an uproar. For so many years, there had not been a single domestic brand that could enter Global Department Store. Once they succeeded, it meant that they had stepped out of the country and into the world. For some small enterprises, this was something that they would never dare to imagine in their lifetime. But now, they all had the opportunity to compete for this spot. Marketing Director Marissa, who was in charge of the selection of brands, had just stepped onto China's soil. Many manufacturers had designs on her and tried all kinds of ways to get close to her. Unfortunately, even if they knew the flight she was on, no one knew what she looked like, let alone her whereabouts. There was simply no way to get close to her. Jiang Tianhao was proud of his talent and disdained to play tricks. Every day he worked overtime to write the proposal. He was secretly determined to conquer Marissa with his talent. On the other hand, Ji Yuqi also attached great importance to this selection. Her slender fingers tapped lightly on the office desk. Her charming phoenix eyes narrowed slightly as she recalled the situation in her previous life. This selection was held a year earlier than in her previous life. Perhaps it was because of her rebirth that some things had changed due to the butterfly effect. In her previous life, the person who won the selection was Jiang Tianhao. It was because of this that he gained the recognition of his father and the board of directors and climbed to the position of marketing director. Don't underestimate this position. It was the most important step for Jiang Tianhao to get close to the center of power. She snorted coldly. This time, with her around, he could forget about getting his way. Although the G Group's business was important, protecting the G Group was even more important. Thus, she would rather the G Group give up this fat piece of meat to chase him out of the G Group. Moreover, if Free could get this piece of meat, it could be considered as keeping the goodies within the family. The ones who would benefit would be her own family. This was a good deal. The corners of Jiyuqi's lips curled up, and a determined smile appeared on her exquisite face. Her phone suddenly rang. She stopped smiling and put the phone to her ear. "How's the matter going?" A man's lazy and magnetic voice came from the phone. "Hey, the fish has taken the bait. It's only a matter of time before they file for divorce. I'm still thinking about when to let the mother and daughter meet. Oh, the scene will definitely be exciting. I'm looking forward to it." Jiyuqi raised her eyebrows and laughed softly. "You're really something. No wonder you're the #1 prince." "Of course, I'm a professional." The man laughed softly, but there was a subtle bitterness in his laughter. "Miss, I've already completed half of the task you gave me. How's the matter I gave you going?" Jiyuqi leaned back in her comfortable chair. Her eyes were filled with warmth as she said calmly, "In a week's time, Dr. Johnson will perform the surgery on an. After you've completed your task, you can go to America to accompany her. And will definitely be very happy to see her handsome brother." The person on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment. Then he said slowly in a low voice, "Has anyone ever told you that you're actually not a bad person?" Jiyuqi was stunned. Complex emotions flashed past her eyes. Her voice was cold. "That's because you don't understand the complete me. You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing things according to our agreement." The man laughed softly. This time, there was joy in his laughter. "Why do I feel like you're angry? Is it fun to be treated as a bad person?" Jiyuqi was silent for a second. She didn't answer his question and changed the topic. "That's not important. What's important is that I have something I need you to do now." "Okay, I'm willing to serve my beautiful princess." The man's teasing laughter was heard. Jiyuqi's mouth twitched. That guy was simply too indecent. Jiang Tianhao was busy planning the selection of Universal Department Store. Every day, he would leave early and return late. Sometimes, he would even bring his work home to deal with it. He didn't have time to deal with Yi Zissou. Yi Zissou had the opportunity to sneak out and go on a date with Xiao Yihan. The two of them had sex in Xiao Yihan's residence for a long time. Yi Zissou leaned into his arms. Her slender fingers peeled the grape skin and fed the flesh to him. He took the opportunity to suck on her fingers and kiss them. The two of them fooled around for a while. Xiao Yihan said sadly, "Baby, when are you going to divorce him?" "I can't wait." Yi Zissou smiled and comforted him. "Don't be impatient. He was bullied so badly by Jiang Tianhao. He wants to take revenge on him. You won't disagree, right?" Xiao Yihan's eyes lit up and he was in high spirits. "I thought you couldn't bear to part with him. Since it's revenge, then I'm relieved. Baby, tell me, what do you plan to do?" Yi Zissou frowned. "Actually, I haven't thought about it yet." Xiao Yihan pinched her nose and laughed. "The news has been abuzz recently. It's said that Universal Department Store is going to select a clothing brand in China. Doesn't G Group want to get involved?" "Yes, Jiang Tianhao has been busy with this recently." She suddenly looked up at him and narrowed her eyes. "Brother Yihan, do you have a good idea?" Xiao Yihan raised his eyebrows and said patiently, "What if Jiang Tianhao doesn't get a spot in the selection this time?" Yi Zissou's eyes narrowed. She smiled and kissed his smooth chin. She said coquettishly, "Brother Yihan, you're so smart." All the clothing companies participating in the selection emailed their plans to Miss Marissa's assistant. A week later, Marissa announced the final list of companies participating in the selection. There were a total of 5 companies, including G Group and Free Company. The final selection was set to be held on Monday at the 5-star hotel where Marissa was staying. Jiang Tianhao had organized the information the night before and put it in his briefcase. Just in case, he even locked his briefcase in the drawer of his desk. At 8:30 a.m. on Monday, Jiang Tianhao walked into the conference room of the 5-star hotel with his briefcase and 2 colleagues. There were already 3 people sitting in the luxuriously decorated conference room. One of them was Qing Sang, who represented Free Company in the selection. She sat in her seat expressionlessly, with a proposal and information in her hands, waiting for Marissa's arrival. At 9 o'clock a.m. sharp, the heavy wooden door was pushed open. A tall Western beauty with blonde hair and blue eyes walked in slowly in high heels. Her facial features were exquisite, and her blonde hair was tied up high on her head. She wore a tailored professional suit, which made her look capable and candid. Her plump lips curled into a faint smile, and she said in stiff Chinese, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marissa, the marketing director of Global Department Store. It's our first time meeting each other." Everyone in the room responded with a smile. Marissa smiled and nodded. Her beautiful blue eyes turned to the assistant and translator beside her, and she nodded at her. The assistant glanced at everyone and said politely, "Today, I've invited everyone here in the hope of hearing your introduction of your respective clothing brands and future plans. Please start in order. First, Mr. Chen from Audiobook Company will come to the stage to give his speech." A handsome middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes stood up and walked towards the podium. His assistant immediately distributed the information to everyone present. The projector projected the beautifully made PowerPoint slides onto the huge screen. The man in a suit on the stage spoke in English. Marissa listened attentively and nodded in agreement from time to time. Jiang Tianhao looked calm and seemed to be listening attentively. In fact, only he knew that the back of his shirt was drenched in sweat. Come and see. Xinwu 799. Chapter 887. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't nervous. This was the first time he was facing such an important meeting after graduating from university. This meeting could be said to be a turning point in his life. He could only succeed, not fail. Qing Sang calmly glanced at Jiang Tianhao's tightly clenched fingers, and her lips curled into a faint sneer. Next, let's welcome Miss Qing Sang from Free Company. Qing Sang was in 4th place, and the person behind her was Jiang Tianhao. She didn't look nervous at all, and her beautiful face was still expressionless. Her hair was combed neatly, and she wore a professional suit. She actually had the noble and elegant temperament of a queen. Her deep eyes calmly looked down at the audience, and her words were clear, and she calmly and rationally expressed her views. There was always a magnetic field between similar people. Marissa's impression of Qing Sang slowly increased. When Qing Sang finished speaking, she even smiled and clapped, praising her in broken Chinese, "Excellent." As the person who spoke after Qing Sang, Jiang Tianhao felt even more pressure. He even wanted to pull at his tie, but in the end, he restrained himself. Finally, let's welcome Mr. Jiang from G Group to the stage. Jiang Tianhao took a deep breath and walked up to the stage with steady and confident steps. He inserted the USB drive into the port and opened the folder that he had opened countless times. Click click. The sound of the mouse clicking. When he saw the names of the files displayed on the screen, Jiang Tianhao's pupils suddenly shrank and his mind went blank. A bone-chilling chill suddenly rose from the soles of his feet to the top of his head, and he was so cold that he almost trembled. The screen was full of wretched file names. Hardcore movies, porn videos, training and abusive sex, handcuffs, candles, small leather whips, and so on. Everyone was stunned by the things on the projection screen, and the room was frighteningly quiet. Cold sweat dripped from Jiang Tianhao's forehead as he hurriedly closed the folder. Unexpectedly, his hand trembled and he clicked on a video. The scene immediately changed to a naked man and woman. The man was using a leather whip to whip the woman, and he was swearing obscenely. The sound of panting and the low voice resounded throughout the entire conference room. More than 10 men present all stared at the projection, dumbfounded. Some with poor self-control even raised small flags and awkwardly crossed their legs to cover their disobedient parts. Ching Sang stared expressionlessly at the unsightly scene, and there was a glimmer of brilliance hidden in her deep eyes. Marissa's female assistant was already blushing with shame. A trace of displeasure flashed across Marissa's eyebrows, but her tone was still calm. She said in English, "Mr. Jiang, you really know how to joke. However, our time is limited. Please start your presentation quickly." Jiang Tianhao's handsome cheeks were red with embarrassment. He wanted to dig a hole and bury himself in it. He clenched his teeth and tried to calm down. He quickly closed the video, unplugged the USB flash drive, and rummaged in his briefcase for a long time before he found an identical USB flash drive from the bottom. He opened it carefully. This time, he finally found the right one. After the embarrassing scene just now, Jiang Tianhao was so guilty that he didn't dare to look at the eyes of the audience. When he was explaining, he kept making mistakes. It wasn't easy for him to stutter and finish his presentation. The moment he walked off the podium, he knew that he was finished. After Marissa and her assistant discussed it for a while, they announced the result on the spot. Free Company won the selection. Ching Sang was not surprised. She politely shook hands with Marissa and thanked her for thinking so highly of her. Marissa joked, "Miss Ching Sang, are all the women in the workplace in China as good as you?" Ching Sang curled her lips. "Miss Marissa, you flatter me. My boss is better than me. By the way, she is also a woman." "Wow, that's really unexpected. I thought that the status of women in the workplace in China wasn't high." Marissa seemed to like Ching Sang very much. She walked side by side with her, and the two left laughing and chatting. Soon, only Jiang Tianhao and his colleagues were left in the conference room. One of the colleagues sneered, "I didn't expect you to have such a strong taste. You don't care about the occasion and just do whatever you want." Another colleague immediately said, "The Universal Department Store's quota was taken by another company. The company will definitely hold us responsible. Tianhao, this time, it's not that I don't want to help you." Jiang Tianhao's face was ashen. He put his hands on the table and gritted his teeth. "Don't worry, I won't drag you down." These words were said through gritted teeth, but the two colleagues didn't care what kind of mood he was in. After getting the answer they wanted, they looked at each other and smiled in a way that only the other person could understand. In less than half a day, Jiang Tianhao became famous. His name swept through the entire clothing industry. As long as he was mentioned, everyone would talk about his strong taste. Even the G Group lost face. Bam! A thick stack of documents was slammed on the table. Ji Bowen roared at Jiang Tianhao with a face full of anger. "What the hell are you doing? It's bad enough that you didn't get the quota, but you also humiliated the company." Jiang Tianhao lowered his head. "Chairman, I know it's too late to say anything. I'm willing to take all the responsibility." You, Ji Bowen pointed at Jiang Tianhao's nose. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. During the board meeting just now, he was besieged by a group of shareholders. They all said that he didn't know how to pick people. They also said that he was nepotistic and put people who didn't have the ability to commit crimes into the company. The shareholder who often went against him even used this to threaten him to give up the position of chairman. And all of this was because of Jiang Tianhao. He shouldn't have been soft-hearted and let Jiang Tianhao enter the G Group. Jiang Tianhao saw that he was angry, but he did not try to defend himself. He only lowered his head respectfully, as if he was admitting his mistake. His slightly downcast eyes were filled with hatred, and his fingers hanging by his legs were tightly clenched into fists. Ji Bowen was so angry that his blood rushed to his head. He felt a metallic taste in his throat. His chest felt uncomfortable. He supported himself with one hand on the desk and said with difficulty, "Get out." Jiang Tianhao raised his head to look at him. His face was pale. He opened his mouth and gasped for breath. He pressed one hand on his chest and the other hand rubbed the drawer as if he was looking for something. "Father-in-law, are you okay?" Ji Bowen had already taken out a medicine bottle. He poured out 2 pills and swallowed them. When his chest felt better, he said sternly, "Get out. I don't want to talk to you right now." Jiang Tianhao didn't say anything. He obediently left the room. His eyes, which were covered by his fringe, were filled with hostility. When he came out of the chairman's office, he was greeted by all kinds of colorful gazes. Some were mocking, some were watching a good show, some were indifferent, and some were adding insult to injury. The only thing missing was sympathy. He didn't need sympathy. He looked around coldly and walked away expressionlessly. Tisk, what's there to be proud of? He just married a good wife. I didn't expect him to be an honest man. He's actually a gentle beast. You can never judge a book by its cover. Shoo, keep your voice down. But I do sympathize with his wife. Do you think he'll use those methods on his wife? Ugh, so perverted. The voices of those discussions weren't loud or soft, but it was just enough to reach Jiang Tianhao's ears. He walked past them expressionlessly as if he didn't hear them. Before he walked out of the office, he slowly turned his head. His cold eyes were filled with hatred. It was like the fire of hell. He slowly swept his gaze over each and every one of them as if he wanted to engrave their faces into his heart. That malicious gaze made people shudder, and everyone subconsciously shut their mouths. That afternoon, the Human Resources Department issued a punishment. Jiang Tianhao's 1-month bonus was deducted. It seemed like a light punishment, but only he knew that his dream of being promoted was shattered. It was extremely difficult to regain Ji Bowen's recognition. Hubby, you're back. How was it? Did the selection go smoothly? The moment Jiang Tianhao rang the doorbell, Yizisu immediately opened the door and considerately took the briefcase from his hands. Jiang Tianhao stared at her coldly without saying a word. The smile on Yizisu's face froze. She said softly, "Hubby, what's wrong? Did it not go well? Don't take it to heart. You'll have another chance next time." She wanted to continue speaking, but Jiang Tianhao grabbed her wrist and strode into the bedroom. "Oh, it hurts. Hubby, be gentler." Her wrist was gripped tightly by him. It hurt so much that she frowned. But he didn't seem to hear it. He dragged her into the bedroom and threw her onto the bed. He quickly loosened his tie and took off his jacket. Before she could react, he had already leaned on top of her. His face was as cold as ice as he asked coldly, "Did you do this?" Yizisu shrunk back uneasily. "Hubby, what are you talking about? I really don't understand." "You don't understand?" Jiang Tianhao smiled maliciously. He suddenly bent over and used both hands to rip open her dress. His right hand rubbed under the bed for a moment, then he pulled out a black leather whip and whipped her body. "Ah!" Yizisu screamed and rolled on the bed. Her messy clothes had already slipped off, revealing her snow-white skin. Jiang Tianhao's eyes were burning with anger. His tyrannical aura swelled again. He gritted his teeth and whipped her again. Red marks instantly spread all over her body. He cursed as he whipped her, "You betrayed me. You betrayed me." He had 2 identical USB drives. One contained documents, and the other contained erotic movies. Only this B*TCH knew his secret. She must have secretly stuffed the USB drive into his briefcase. "Hubby, stop hitting me. It hurts. Hubby, I beg you, stop hitting me." Even though her body was used to this kind of pain, Yizisu still couldn't bear this kind of humiliation. She cried and begged for mercy. She trembled and curled into a ball, but it was no use. It only stimulated Jiang Tianhao's tyrannical nature. The demon that had been imprisoned in the bottom of his heart for a long time was released. He was so excited that his eyes turned red. He simply threw away the whip and pulled out his belt. The whip was a sex toy, so it was relatively safe. Even if he whipped it hard, it wouldn't cause too much harm to the abused person. But the belt was different. It could whip a person to death. So, when he raised the belt, Yizisu's eyes were full of fear. She rolled on the ground in horror and stumbled toward the door. He kicked her leg and she immediately fell to the ground. She didn't have time to get up, but the belt had already hit her face. She wailed in pain and rolled around on the cold floor. There was no intact skin on her back. There were crisscrossing scars and blood stains. She cried for Yushio, praying that this nominal mother-in-law could save her life. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 888. Yushio stood outside the master bedroom, hesitating. She knew that her son was abusing Yizisu. She had thought of persuading him to stop, but she gave up in the end because of the hatred between the Jiang and Ji families. Mother-in-law, save me. Please save me. Hubby, spare me. I won't do it again. Yizisu's cries were more miserable than before. They penetrated the door and pierced Yushio's eardrums. She was afraid that someone would die, so she finally reached out and knocked on the door. Tianhao, forget it. Don't hit her. Be careful not to kill her. The sound of slapping and crying continued. Yushio couldn't take it anymore. She opened the door with the key and saw a mess. Yizisu was lying on the ground like a dead dog. Her back was a bloody mess, and Jiang Tianhao was half naked. His eyes were terrifyingly red, and his face was as ferocious as a demon. He had no rationality and only knew how to whip her over and over again. Yushio was scared out of her wits. She quickly grabbed his wrist and said incoherently, Son, look at me. I'm your mother. Don't hit her anymore. She'll die if you hit her again. Son? Tianhao, what's wrong? Don't scare your mother. Tianhao, Jiang Tianhao's mind was in a mess. A familiar female voice kept ringing in his ears. He turned stiffly and looked at the worried face of the woman in front of him. His red eyes gradually regained their clarity. He let go of his hand and the belt fell to the ground. He saw Yizisu lying lifelessly on the floor. Her body was a bloody mess. He suddenly panicked. He threw himself on her and checked her breathing. If she was dead, he was done for. Fortunately, she was still breathing. He suddenly raised his head and shouted at the panicked Yushio, Mom, call an ambulance. Yushio picked up the phone and was about to make a call when Jiang Tianhao suddenly thought of something and shouted, No, Mom, don't call. You can't send her to the hospital. If he sent her to the hospital, the doctor would be able to tell at a glance how she got her injuries and might call the police. Yushio was stunned. Then what should we do? Don't you care about her? Jiang Tianhao frowned and thought for a moment. He quickly walked into the bedroom, took out a clean blanket, and wrapped it around her from head to toe. He then carried her and said quickly, Mom, I'll take her to the clinic. You stay at home and don't tell anyone about her injury. I got it. Hurry up and go. Jiang Tianhao pursed his lips and carried Yizisu downstairs. After stuffing her into the back seat of the car, he drove the car around the brightly lit streets. Finally, he saw a small clinic with its lights on in an alley. He stopped the car without hesitation and carried her out. The night shift was a man in his 40s. He had a round face and a chubby body. When he smiled, his eyes narrowed into slits and he gave off a sly vibe. Jiang Tianhao stuffed a thick stack of money into his hands and said in a low voice, My wife accidentally fell and hurt herself. Could you please treat her wound, doctor? Don't worry. With me here, your wife will be fine. The doctor smiled and put away the red packet as if nothing had happened. He lifted the blanket and his pupils shrank. However, his expression didn't change and he said calmly, Wait outside for a moment. I'm going to treat the patient's wound. Jiang Tianhao retreated out of the room. The doctor carefully examined Yizisu's wound and shook his head. It was obvious that she was beaten by her husband. She was really pitiful. However, it was none of his business. As long as he could earn money, it was fine. The doctor spent nearly half an hour treating Yizisu's wound. He applied medicine and gave her a bottle of anti-inflammatory 4-drip. Then, he opened the door and signaled Jiang Tianhao to go in. Yizisu was still unconscious. Jiang Tianhao sat beside her and saw her frown. Her face was pale and she looked like she was in pain. He only felt his heart was in a mess. He originally wanted to teach her a lesson, but he didn't expect that he would lose control of his emotions and beat her until she was seriously injured. Don't hit me. Sob. It hurts. It hurts. Even though she was unconscious, she didn't sleep well. She kept having nightmares and talking in her sleep. Tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Her pitiful appearance really made one's heart ache. Jiang Tianhao didn't feel any heartache. He only felt a headache. He didn't know how to comfort her when she woke up. He also didn't know how to explain it to her parents. He used a wet towel to wipe the tears on her face and coaxed her gently. "It's okay, honey. I won't hit you again. It's my fault." His words didn't have the effect of comforting her. Yi Zhisu cried even more sadly. It was as if she was having a nightmare. She struggled violently and kicked her legs. She cried out miserably, "It hurts. It hurts. Let go of me. What's wrong?" The doctor rushed over. Jiang Tianhao said awkwardly, "It's nothing. My wife is having a nightmare. Sorry to trouble you." The doctor didn't seem to care. He said, "Call me if you need anything." Then he left. Jiang Tianhao stood guard for the whole night. It wasn't until the next morning that Yi Zhisu woke up. The moment she saw Jiang Tianhao, she trembled reflexively. His face was full of guilt. He knelt in front of her on one knee and held her hand. He said softly, "Honey, I was wrong. I drank too much yesterday. That's why I did that. Please forgive me, okay?" Yi Zhisu flung his hand away. She turned around and buried her head in the blanket, crying. He hurriedly tried to remove the blanket from her head. "Honey, don't be like this. Be careful not to suffocate. It's all my fault. I really know that I was wrong. I won't hurt you again." A man's oath was like bullshit. Only the sound of it could be heard after it was released. Yi Zhisu would never believe his vows again, but she would continue to put on an act. She cried very sadly, as if her heart was broken. No matter what he said, she would not listen to him. Jiang Tianhao had no choice. He called Yu Xiu over. The mother and son went up together to persuade Yi Zhisu. Yi Zhisu still didn't listen. She cried until her voice was hoarse. Jiang Tianhao and his mother swore that they would never abuse her again. Only then did she slowly stop crying. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked at Jiang Tianhao pitifully and said in a hoarse voice, "Hubby, I want to go home." Jiang Tianhao was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, "Okay, I'll take you home now." Yi Zhisu shook her head and said softly, "I want to go back to the Ji family." Jiang Tianhao's expression changed. He was pained and guilty. "Wife, are you still not willing to forgive me?" Her eyelashes fluttered, and her tears fell again. She seemed to feel that it was inappropriate, so she quickly wiped them away and explained softly, "Hubby, don't let your imagination run wild. I just miss my mother." She looked at him with her big, watery eyes, full of expectation. "Hubby, is that okay? Can I go home?" If he didn't agree to such a small request, then wouldn't his oath be insincere? Thinking about this, Jiang Tianhao did not reject her immediately. He stroked her hair and said softly, "You haven't recovered yet. Go home and stay for 2 days. When you've recovered, I'll accompany you back to your parents' home to visit mother-in-law." Yi Zhisu nodded weakly. Jiang Tianhao's smile became gentler. His hanging heart fell back into his chest. He thought it would be difficult to deal with her, but he didn't expect it to be so easy. He was a little smug. It seemed that she still loved him a lot. She could even forgive him for being treated violently. That joy only lasted for a day. The next day, Jiang Tianhao was furious. It turned out that it was all a trap set by Yi Zhisu. Yi Zhisu agreed to go home with him because she had hidden a pinhole camera in her bedroom. It recorded the entire process of her being abused by Jiang Tianhao. She had to go back and take the memory card in the camera. After removing the memory card, she took advantage of the time when Jiang Tianhao went to work and Yu Xiu went grocery shopping to pack her luggage. Then, she drove her car back to her parents' home. "Mom, you have to help me." Yi Zhisu immediately threw herself on Qin Tingfang when she returned to the Ji family. She cried miserably and listed Jiang Tianhao's crimes. She even took off her coat to show the evidence, which made Qin Tingfang's heart ache. She called Jiang Tianhao a bastard and scolded him. Yi Zhisu used the scars all over her body to make Qin Tingfang feel sorry for her. She hugged her mother's arm and said sadly, "Mom, I don't want to live with him anymore. Otherwise, I'll be killed by him sooner or later." Divorce decisively. Even if my daughter can't get married, she can't be ruined by that kind of scum. Yi Zhisu took out the memory card and said with tears in her eyes, "Mom, This is evidence of him abusing me. You can't let him go. Good, as expected of my daughter. I'll make sure he never has a chance to rise again. Chen Tingfang immediately called the Ji family's lawyer and asked him to handle the divorce between Yi Zhisu and Jiang Tianhao. Ji Bowen was furious when he found out about Jiang Tianhao's actions. Even if Zhisu wasn't his biological daughter, he still had fatherly feelings for her. He couldn't allow outsiders to bully her like this. He approved of Yi Zhisu and Jiang Tianhao's divorce and informed the HR department to fire Jiang Tianhao. Jiang Tianhao was dumbfounded when he received the lawyer's letter. He couldn't believe that Yi Zhisu would divorce him. Was she crazy? Before he could come back to his senses, the HR manager called him to the office and handed him a dismissal letter. Jiang Tianhao said emotionally, "Manager, what does this mean? Didn't the previous punishment already come out?" The HR manager said expressionlessly, "This is a personal message from the chairman. You have to hand over your work today. You don't have to come to work tomorrow." Ji Bowen's message? It must have something to do with Yi Zhisu. That be asterisk Tisich, didn't she just get beaten up? She actually dared to divorce him and kick him out of the G group. How despicable! Jiang Tianhao's handsome face was twisted with anger. He crumpled the dismissal letter into a ball and held it tightly in his hand. He didn't care about handing over his work and drove his car to the Ji family's house at the speed of an airplane. He angrily rushed into the villa. He stood in the empty living room and roared at the second floor, "Yi Zhisu, come out. You've got guts. You actually dared to come here." Chen Tingfang's figure appeared in the corridor on the second floor. She stared at the crazy Jiang Tianhao with disgust and cursed, "You be asterisk starred. I handed my daughter over to you and you actually dared to abuse her. Do you think the Ji family is easy to bully?" Jiang Tianhao gritted his teeth and said angrily, "Don't think that your daughter is a good person. If she didn't seduce other people outside, why would I hit her? All of this was caused by her. Call Yi Zhisu out. I want to talk to her face to face." Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 889. Bah, you're not clean, yet you dare to falsely accuse my daughter. You're shameless to the extreme. Let me tell you, Jiang Tianhao, if you obediently get a divorce and get out of the G group, I can still spare you this once on account of our past relationship. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being rude. Ha, I'd like to see how rude you can be. Jiang Tianhao suddenly laughed eerily. He was no longer impatient and instead sat down leisurely on the sofa. He looked coldly at the people upstairs, his eyes clouded over, and his tone was low and slow. "If you don't want Ji Bowen to know what you've done, then call Yi Zhisu out." Chen Tingfang's eyes narrowed, and her mind raced. She realized that Jiang Tianhao might have something on her. Just as she was about to say something, Yi Zhisu suddenly rushed out of the room, rushed to the railing and shouted, "Didn't you want to talk to me? Okay, I'll talk to you." "Zhisu, don't go." Chen Tingfang grabbed Yi Zhisu's arm, her eyes full of worry. "Mom, fine. Trust me, I won't lose out." Yi Zhisu took her hand away and smiled at her. The room was very quiet, and they could almost hear each other's breathing. Yi Zhisu poured a glass of water for Jiang Tianhao and said indifferently, "Okay, what do you want to talk to me about? Let's talk." Jiang Tianhao looked at the porcelain cup in front of him. His face was printed on the cup, and their names were engraved on the side. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. "You made this yourself on my birthday. The cup you gave me has your face printed on it. I put it in my office and drink from it every day. It's like I'm with you every moment." His tone was a little sad. Yi Zhisu couldn't help but recall how they loved each other in the past. She felt a little disappointed, a little regretful, and even more hatred. She loved him so wholeheartedly, but he pretended to love her in order to use her. Her lips curled into a mocking smile, and she said indifferently, "So you still remember? I thought you'd forgotten everything. Jiang Tianhao, touch your conscience and answer me. Have you ever loved me?" Jiang Tianhao was slightly stunned. His face darkened and he said, "Even now, are you still doubting my love for you? Zhisu, even though I've done some wrong, it's all because I love you too much. I thought you'd betrayed me, so I was so impulsive." "Oh, is that so?" Yi Zisa didn't comment as she stroked the hair by her ear. She looked straight at him with a calm gaze and said indifferently, Jiang Tianhao, aren't you tired of pretending to be so affectionate all day long? You really don't have to put on an act in front of me. I know that everything you've done is for revenge. From the beginning to the end, I've only been a chess piece in your hands. Jiang Tianhao's pupils shrank suddenly, and a storm surged in his eyes. How did she know? No wonder she suddenly wanted a divorce. The wall that Jiang Tianhao had built in his heart suddenly collapsed. He no longer had the confidence that he could use true love to move her, but he didn't hide his true self anymore. He suddenly reached out his right hand and pinched her chin. He stared at her with a dark gaze. His tone was gentle, but the words that came out of his mouth made her shudder. Divorce me, huh? Aren't you afraid that I'll expose what you've done? You drugged Ji Yuqi and ordered your good cousin, Chen Yifei, to ruin her innocence. You asked Shaoran to spike Ji Yuqi's wine in an attempt to ruin Ji Yuqi's reputation. Also, that good mother of yours kidnapped Ji Yuqi and colluded with the mafia. If Ji Bowen finds out about this, do you think he'll chase you and your mother out of the Ji family? I'm really curious. He used a lot of strength in his hand, and Yi Zisa's chin was pinched so hard that a red mark appeared. It was so painful that she was about to cry. She gritted her teeth and kicked his calf hard. He felt the pain and flung her chin away. She quickly stepped back and stood a distance away from him. She said coldly, "Words are no proof. Do you think that Ji Bowen will believe you just because of your words? Stop dreaming." "Pa, who says words are no proof?" Jiang Tianhao endured the pain and took out his phone from his pocket. He pressed a button, and the sound of Yi Zisu and Chen Tingfang plotting to hurt Ji Yuqi immediately rang out in the room. Yi Zisu's face changed drastically, but she quickly regained her composure and sneered. "You have the nerve to bring out such a thing? What a joke. Who knows if you're taking revenge by getting a voice actor to imitate our voices? Other than this, I have something even more interesting." Yi Zisu had already seen how vicious Jiang Tianhao could be. Of course, she didn't dare to take the risk. She bit her lip and said hatefully, "If you want to lose your reputation and no longer be able to stay in Ing City, then go ahead and expose those so-called evidence. At most, we'll fight to the death. No one will benefit from it." Jiang Tianhao's gaze darkened. "What do you mean by that?" She sneered. "What I mean is that I will announce to the world that you're a pervert who likes to use sex and violence. In the future, no rich miss will dare to marry you. Your dream of becoming a rich man will also be shattered. Not only will G Group not want you, but other companies won't want you either. Do you think everyone will believe you? Ha, what a wonderful reversal." Yi Zisu returned his words to him. "I have something interesting too. If you want to see it, you can see it online in half an hour. How about it? Do you want to take a gamble? You secretly filmed it?" Jiang Tianhao glared at her with eyes full of hatred. It seemed like he would pounce on her and tear her to pieces in the next second. Yi Zisu was suddenly not afraid. This was the Ji family. Could he beat her to death? She laughed mockingly. "Yes, such an interesting scene of violence. How can I not record it as a memento?" As soon as she finished speaking, Jiang Tianhao suddenly pounced on her. His hands gripped her neck tightly. His face was ferocious as he said sternly, "Hand it over, or I'll kill you." Yi Zisu looked up with a strong sense of suffocation. Her beautiful eyes were filled with hatred. She said hoarsely, "Kill me. After you kill me, you'll go to jail and wait to be shot. Your mother won't have a son to take care of her, so she'll die a miserable death. With the two of you dying with me, why should I be afraid of death?" Jiang Tianhao slowly let go of her neck and took 2 steps back. In just a few seconds, he became a well-dressed man again. He tidied up his messy clothes and said calmly, "I agree to the divorce, but you have to agree to a few conditions." Half an hour later, Jiang Tianhao walked out of Yi Zisu's room. Chen Tingfang glared at him and asked the servants to send him away. She then went into her daughter's room. "Zisu, what did that bastard say? He didn't bully you, right?" Yi Zisu's heart warmed. Her mother would always love her the most. Her eyes reddened and she said softly, "Mom, I've reached an agreement with him. We'll divorce peacefully. Mom, sorry. I was too ignorant in the past and didn't see through that man's true colors. Now that things have turned out like this, it's all my own fault. Yes, you stinking girl. I advised you not to marry him, but you didn't listen. Chen Tingfang kept scolding her, but her eyes were gentle. She pulled her daughter into her arms and wiped her tears. Okay, don't cry. You're already so old, yet you're still crying. Don't you find it embarrassing? Mom, Yi Zissou threw herself into her arms and couldn't stop crying. Chen Tingfang comforted Yi Zissou for a while before she slowly stopped crying. She told her about the agreement with Jiang Tianhao in detail. Neither of us can use the evidence in our hands to threaten each other, and we can't tell the public the real reason for the divorce. We can only say that our personalities don't match. In terms of property, the house will be mine, and the car will be his. Chen Tingfang was angry when she heard that. But our Ji family paid for the house and the car. Why should we give him the car? Mom, it's better to offend a gentleman than a villain. Jiang Tianhao is a villain. If giving him the car can shut his mouth and stop him from pestering me, I'll give it to him. Besides, he's been kicked out of the G group by Uncle G. He can forget about basking in the glory of the G group in the future. He has no connections and no money. It's not impossible for us to deal with him secretly in the future. Chen Tingfang smiled approvingly. You're right, Zizis. You're much more mature than before. Mom can finally rest assured. After Yi Zissou and Jiang Tianhao reached an agreement, they divorced quietly. Yi Zissou gave them 3 days to move out of her house. Yu Xiu cursed and scolded everyone in the Ji family. Jiang Tianhao quickly accepted reality. He quickly rented a small suite with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room and moved in with Yu Xiu. However, it was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. The two of them were used to living in a luxurious house. They were used to living in a life where their clothes and food were served. They were not used to living in an unfurnished and cramped house. Yu Xiu scolded Yi Zissou again. Jiang Tianhao became more and more irritated. He was busy looking for a job every day and had to listen to his mother's nagging. It was really annoying. Jiang Tianhao had lost face in the entire clothing industry. Naturally, the relevant companies were not willing to hire him. He was too embarrassed to go to their door and be humiliated. He thought highly of himself. He didn't want to go to small companies, and the big companies didn't want him. He procrastinated for a month and was still at home waiting for a job. In the end, he had to lower his sights and enter a small construction company. On the first day of work, he drove the BMW that Ji Bowen had given him when he got married, which attracted a lot of attention and suspicion. Even the HR manager tactfully reminded him not to be too ostentatious. It was inevitable that he would be ostracized by his new colleagues. Jiang Tianhao sat alone at the bar and drank alone. He looked at the man and woman dancing on the dance floor, and the wine in his mouth was so bitter that it was difficult to swallow. He was originally the pride of the school. He was originally the son-in-law of a rich family. He had the ambition to take back what belonged to him. Why had he fallen to such a state? He drank one glass after another. His vision gradually became blurry. He knew that he was drunk. He stood up shakily and staggered out. He wanted to go home. He lowered his head and did not look in front of him. He accidentally bumped into a tall and burly man. He lost his balance and sat on the ground. The burly man grabbed his tie and lifted him up from the ground. He said angrily, "Motherf asterisk cur, don't you have eyes?" Jiang Tianhao felt uncomfortable being grabbed by the strong man. He frowned and was about to speak when his stomach churned. He couldn't control himself and vomited into the strong man's arms. The strong man closed his eyes in disgust and angrily punched Jiang Tianhao. Ad. Hongcha 866. Chapter 890. F***ck, that's disgusting. I'll beat you to death today. The burly man quickly took off his clothes. His arms were bare as he punched and kicked Jiang Tianhao, who was sprawled on the ground. The people around them watched anxiously, and no one dared to step forward to stop them. It was only when Jiang Tianhao lay motionless on the ground that the owner of the bar was afraid that he would die. Only then did he step forward to persuade Jiang Tianhao. The brawny man spat on the ground and cursed, "What bad luck!" He then swaggered away. In the bar, the music was still playing. The men and women dancing on the dance floor were not disturbed by the scene at all. Yi Zixu was in Xiao Yihan's arms. Her sarcastic gaze fell on Jiang Tianhao, who was sprawled on the ground like a dead dog. Xiao Yihan bit her earlobe and chuckled softly. "Are you satisfied, my baby?" Yi Zixu turned her face to the side and kissed his lips. She whispered, "I'm very satisfied. Thank you for helping me vent my anger." The two of them kissed more and more passionately. In the end, Xiao Yihan pressed her body tightly against his chest and whispered, "Let's go back to the car?" She didn't say anything and bit his chest. He took a deep breath and said, "Little vixen, see how I'll deal with you later." She was like a seductive vixen as she lay in his arms and giggled happily. He gritted his teeth, carried her horizontally, and walked out quickly. Jiang Tianhao happened to be sprawled in the middle of the road. He didn't hesitate to step over him. Yi Zixu leaned her face on Xiao Yihan's shoulder and stared at Jiang Tianhao with a half-smile. Her lips parted slightly as if she was saying something. Jiang Tianhao's entire body was in pain, and his cheeks were swollen like a pig's head. He struggled to open his eyes, and in a daze, he saw Yi Zixu lying on top of a man, giving him a strange smile. Jiang Tianhao's blood rushed to his heart, and his vision turned black as he fainted. After the divorce, Jiang Tianhao was down and out, but Yi Zixu was like a fish in water. She was rejuvenated. She started a new relationship without telling her family. She had a romantic relationship with Xiao Yihan and finally crossed the last line of defense. After coming out of the bar, the two of them were entangled endlessly. From the car to Xiao Yihan's apartment, the two of them hugged and kissed passionately. The wind howled throughout the night. The next day, when Yi Zixu woke up, she heard the sound of running water coming from the bathroom. The frosted glass door projected Xiao Yihan's tall and straight figure. She couldn't help but think of the wind from last night, and her cheeks burned. She got up weakly. Her clothes were torn and she couldn't wear them anymore. She casually picked up Xiao Yihan's shirt and put it on. Beep beep. Xiao Yihan's phone suddenly rang. It was the sound of a text message. She hesitated whether she should peek, but in the end, curiosity won out. She quietly picked up the phone. The sender was Sister Chin. She knew that Xiao Yihan used to call her mother Sister Chin. Why would her mother send Yihan a text message? The more she thought about it, the more curious she became. Just as she was about to open the phone to take a look, she suddenly heard the door open. She quickly put the phone back and turned around with a smile. "Good morning." "Good morning, baby." Xiao Yihan didn't see her little action. His handsome face bloomed with a bright smile. He walked to her side and leaned over to give her a hot morning kiss. After a while, he let go of her and smiled gently. "Baby, go wash up first. I'll make breakfast for you." She blushed and nodded. After she finished washing up, Xiao Yihan was still busy in the kitchen. Even though he was wearing an apron, it didn't affect his handsomeness at all. Feeling her gaze, he turned his head and smiled gently. "Don't stand here. It's too smoky. Watch TV or play on the computer for a while. Breakfast will be ready soon." Yi Zixu's heart softened. He was the first man to cook for her. She thought that she had really fallen in love with him. The silver phone was placed on the coffee table. It was obvious that the owner had moved it. Yi Zixu picked up the phone and opened it to take a look. The text message from Sister Chin had disappeared. She flipped through her inbox. There was not a single message from Sister Chin. They were all text messages with her. She then checked the call records. There was also no message from Sister Chin. What was going on? Could it be that he and her mother were hiding something from her? Otherwise, why would he delete the text messages with her mother? Yi Zixu frowned. She began to feel suspicious. Beep beep. The phone rang again. This time, Yi Zixu didn't hesitate. She immediately opened the message from Sister Chin. "I miss you. Let's meet at the usual place this afternoon." She turned pale with fright. Her fingers trembled and she almost threw the phone to the ground. She held the phone tightly with both hands and muttered to herself, "No, no, I must have misunderstood. Mom and Ihan are good friends. That's right, that's it. Baby, what are you talking to yourself about? Xiao Ihan walked out of the kitchen with a plate in each hand. He had a warm smile on his handsome face. Yi Zisou was shocked. She gripped the phone tightly to hide her panic. She smiled stiffly and said, "No, nothing. It's done. Do you need my help?" "No, it's time to eat." "Oh, okay." Yi Zisou hid the phone behind her back. When she walked to the sofa, she secretly threw his phone on the sofa when he wasn't paying attention. Yi Zisou ate the meal blandly. On one hand, she couldn't help but wonder about the relationship between Xiao Yihan and Qin Tingfang. On the other hand, she was worried that Xiao Yihan would find out that she had secretly read his text messages. She was really conflicted and frustrated. Xiao Yihan was oblivious to it. He treated her gently and considerately as usual. He wiped the milk from the corner of her mouth with his finger and chuckled. "Baby, you're so cute." Yi Zisou wanted to reply with a smile, but she couldn't. After struggling for a long time, she finally mustered up the courage to say, "Hun, I heard your phone ring just now and then. I read your text messages. Do you blame me?" A complicated look flashed across Xiao Yihan's eyes, but he maintained his smile. "Silly, it's not a big deal. Why would I blame you?" He took a sip of milk and asked casually, "Who sent it?" Yi Zisou stared into his eyes without blinking and said slowly, "It's from my mom. She said she wants to meet you at the usual place." Xiao Yihan's eyes flickered, and his smile was a little unnatural. "So it's Sister Qin. Some time ago, she said she wanted to start a small business and asked me to give her some advice. She probably asked me out to talk about this." Yi Zisou's fingers clasped the table tightly. Her throat was dry. She was very good at reading people's expressions. She was sure that Yihan was hiding something from her. She slowly took a breath and smiled. "Since you have something to do in the afternoon, you don't have to accompany me. I'll go to the concert with my friends." Xiao Yihan held her hand and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, baby. When I'm done, I'll make it up to you." "It's okay. Business is more important." Yi Zisou's smile was very beautiful, but her heart was very uncomfortable. A chill actually stood her up for her mother. Between them, she couldn't think about it anymore. If she continued to think about it, she would go crazy. In the grand hotel lobby, a handsome man and a fashionably dressed woman wearing sunglasses walked side by side. When they stepped into the elevator, Yi Zisou immediately came out from behind a pillar in the lobby and quickly chased after them. The elevator stopped on the 12th floor. Yi Zisou watched as her mom, Qin Tingfang, held Xiao Yihan's arm and walked into room 1205. Why couldn't they talk in a cafe or a restaurant? Why did they have to talk face to face in a hotel room? Yi Zisou couldn't control her imagination anymore. She gritted her teeth and went downstairs to book the room next to theirs. Like a gecko, she stuck her whole body to the wall and tried to eavesdrop on what was going on in the room next door. However, the soundproofing of the hotel room was quite good, so she couldn't hear anything. She stomped her feet in frustration and picked up her phone to call the front desk. A few minutes later, the sound of knocking echoed in the empty corridor. Then a sweet female voice said, "Hello, I'm the hotel's waitress." The waitress waited at the door for about half a minute before the person in the room opened the door. A handsome and tall figure stood in front of her. His upper body was bare, and there was a towel wrapped around his waist. His firm chest muscles were well defined, and there was no excess fat. His figure was simply amazing. The waitress's cheeks flushed red. She looked down in panic and said softly, "Sir, the champagne and steak you ordered are here." Xiao Yihan glanced at the food cart behind her and frowned unhappily. "I think you're mistaken. I didn't order these things." The waitress looked up in shock. "You didn't order them?" Xiao Yihan frowned even more. "I'm sorry to disturb you." The waitress hurriedly bowed apologetically. When she looked up again, the man in front of her had already retreated into the room and slammed the door shut. She let out a long sigh and muttered to herself, "How could this be? It's clearly room 1205. After the waitress pushed the food cart away, Yi Zisou walked out from behind the huge vase. She clenched her fists and bit her lips so hard that it almost broke. She saw clearly that Xiao Yihan had come out with only a towel wrapped around him. Did he need to take a shower to talk business? There must be something going on between him and Chen Tingfang. She slammed the door shut and roared angrily in the empty room. She punched the pillow with both fists and gritted her teeth as she roared, Why? Why are you stealing my man when you're my mother? Ah, I hate you, Chen Tingfang, I hate you to death. Chen Tingfang was an old woman. Xiao Yihan couldn't possibly like her. She must have seduced him and forced him. Despicable, this was too despicable. Yi Zixu flew into a rage. She grabbed the vase on the coffee table with both hands and slammed it against the wall. Bang! The broken pieces scattered all over the floor. She was still angry, so she picked up the ashtray and threw it against the wall as if she was hitting someone's head. Then she stared at the scratched wall and laughed hysterically. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a frightening viciousness and resentment. She whispered word by word, Even if you're my mother, don't even think about stealing my man. Clang! A faint sound came from next door. Chen Tingfang was pressed under Xiao Yihan's body. She suddenly felt uneasy and avoided his intense kiss. She frowned and said, Yan, I think I heard something. Xiao Yihan bit her neck and said in a muffled voice, Don't worry about it. Focus. Ah, As he teased her skillfully, she threw her worries to the back of her mind. She wrapped her arms tightly around his neck and pressed him closer to her. She indulged herself and sank into a sea of desire with him. The door to the next room finally opened. Seeing Chen Tingfang nestled in Xiao Yihan's arms like a little bird, Yi Zixu's hatred for Chen Tingfang deepened as she watched their backs disappear at the end of the corridor. Awesome novel, Xinwu 799. Chapter 891. That night, Yi Zixu did not return home. She stayed over at Xiao Yihan's house and passionately made love to him. She had a crazy thought in her mind. She wanted to squeeze him dry so that he would never be able to fool around with Chen Tingfang again. She knew that her thoughts were childish, but there was no way she could control it. Late at night, Xiao Yihan hugged her in his arms and fell into a deep sleep. She tried to call out his name, but he did not respond. She quietly withdrew from his arms and rummaged around the room barefooted. She wanted to find evidence of Chen Tingfang and Yihan having an affair. She wanted to threaten Chen Tingfang so that she would not be allowed to interact with Yihan again. After searching for more than half an hour, she did not find anything. She did not even find a group photo. She sat in front of the desk dejectedly and messed up her hair with both hands. She was in an extremely bad mood. She inadvertently raised her head and saw the laptop on the desk. Her eyes suddenly lit up and she quickly turned it on. Password, what was the password? She bit her finger and entered Xiao Yihan's birthday. Then she entered Chen Tingfang's birthday. Still it was not right. The third time, she hesitantly entered her own birthday. She actually succeeded. Yi Zixu felt a little better. She thought that Xiao Yihan must love her. Otherwise, he would not have used her birthday as the password. There were many photos and videos stored on the laptop. Yi Zixu opened them one by one to check, but she did not find what she was looking for. Just as she was about to give up, she suddenly saw a new folder without a name. She opened it with trembling fingers. The folder was filled with erotic photos and an unsightly video. Yi Zixu felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Her face was as white as a sheet because the male and female leads in those photos and videos were Xiao Yihan and Chen Tingfang. Those pictures were very graphic. In addition to all kinds of poses, there were also cosplay scenes. The most disgusting one was the one where Chen Tingfang wore a queen's outfit and stepped on Xiao Yihan. Yi Zixu couldn't believe what she was seeing. She couldn't wait to smash the computer and destroy the evidence. She wrapped her arms around her shoulders and felt extremely cold. The mother and daughter actually fell in love with the same man and even had sex with the same man. Hee, how ironic. You saw everything. A low and hoarse voice came from behind. Yi Zixu turned around stiffly. Xiao Yihan was standing in front of her with his upper body bare. His dark eyes were as deep as the sea, and his handsome face was expressionless. He was like a stone statue, lifeless. His tone was stiff and mechanical. Very good, you finally realized. You definitely can't accept it. Let's break up. Why? Yi Zissou was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She suddenly jumped up from the chair and shouted in a sharp voice, "Why are you with her? You know very well that she's my mother." "I'm sorry." He looked down and stared at his feet coldly as if none of this had anything to do with him. "I don't need you to be sorry. I need an explanation." Yi Zissou threw herself into his arms and grabbed his arm emotionally. She screamed hysterically, "Explain. Hurry up and explain to me." Xiao Yihan still looked down and clenched her fists. Her lips curled into a bitter smile as she said, "There's nothing to explain. I'm dirty. I'm not good enough for you. Let's break up." Slap. The crisp sound shocked the two of them. Yi Zissou's right hand was frozen in midair. She stared blankly at the palm print on his face. Tears rolled down her cheeks and she suddenly covered her face. She cried heartbreakingly, "How could you do this to me? I love you so much. Why did you lie to me? Have you never loved me? You're a liar, a liar." Xiao Yihan's body trembled. He finally looked up slowly and stared at Yi Zissou. At that moment, Yi Zissou finally saw his eyes clearly. His dark eyes were filled with pain. He didn't say a word and just looked at her sadly. It made her heart ache. In the silent night, only her sorrowful cries could be heard. After some time, he spoke again. His voice was hoarse like sandpaper. It's not what?" She stared at him with tears in her eyes. Her heart was filled with anticipation. He took a few steps forward with difficulty and hugged her tightly. He said painfully, "It's not that I've never loved you. I like you. I like you a lot." He said the last few words very softly, but Yi Zissou heard them clearly. She couldn't help but bawl and hit his chest. "Liar, liar. Since you like me, why did you sleep with her?" "I'm sorry." Her head was pressed against his chest. She couldn't see his expression, but from his deep voice, she could hear his sadness. Since he was sad, why did he do such a thing? Her tears fell like rain. "But tell me why. Why did you save me from the darkness and then push me into the abyss with your own hands?" "No, I can't say." Xiao Yihan cupped her face and kissed her gently. His dark eyes were filled with love and pain. "Just pretend that nothing happened between us. Forget about me." After saying that, he let go of her resolutely and turned around. He didn't look at her again. His voice was cold and indifferent. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room. You can leave early tomorrow morning. Don't come looking for me again." "Xiao Yihan, I won't allow you to leave. If you don't make things clear today, I'll..." Yi Zissou shouted anxiously at his back. Suddenly, she saw a small craft knife in the pen holder on the desk. She quickly took it out and pressed it against her chest. She said anxiously, "If you don't make things clear, I'll die in front of you." Xiao Yihan turned around abruptly and saw that she was holding a small knife in her hand. His expression changed drastically and his eyes flashed with panic. He quickly reached out to stop her. "Zissou, put the knife down. Don't do anything stupid." "No, I won't put it down. If you don't make things clear, I'll die in front of you. Anyway, you don't want me anymore. What's the point of me living?" Her eyes were hazy with tears. His face was pale and he shook his head sadly. "Why do you have to force me? Because I love you." Yi Zissou tightened her grip on the knife. The tip of the knife pierced her skin and dark red beads of blood flowed out. It was especially glaring on her snow-white skin. She endured the pain and said, "If you don't tell me, I'll really stab myself in the heart." "Stop. Don't continue." Xiao Yihan suddenly roared. His eyes were about to split open and his handsome face was contorted in pain. "I'm not worth it for you to do that. You're right. I'm a liar. The reason why I got close to you and Sister Chen was to seduce you and cheat you of your feelings." Although his words were heartless, there was sadness hidden in his eyes. Yi Zissou shook her head, refusing to believe his words. "What you want to know, I've already told you. If you insist on seeking death, I won't stop you. But for a dirty man like me, is it worth it?" He looked at her deeply, suddenly turned around, and walked away in large strides, ignoring her. Yi Zisu's tense body suddenly relaxed. She slumped onto the chair and the knife in her hand fell to the ground. She hugged her knees with both hands and curled up under the blanket. She cried silently. Even when she divorced Jiang Tianhao, she didn't feel so bad. After crying silently for a long time, she raised her head and wiped her tears. Her expression was firm. She didn't believe Xiao Yihan's words. He must have his reasons. She must find out the truth. When she woke up the next day, Xiao Yihan was no longer in the room. He left a post-it note on the table and wrote, "There's breakfast in the kitchen. Don't go hungry." He left the key on the coffee table when he left. That key was personally handed to her by Xiao Yihan when they were dating. Now that he wanted to go back, he really wanted to cut all ties with her. Yi Zisu crumpled the note into a ball. Her expression was frighteningly cold. Since they had started a relationship, it wasn't up to him to end it. She wouldn't give up. After breakfast, she did not give up and continued to search his room. She believed that no matter what difficulties he had, he would definitely have left behind some clues. In the end, she found a black notebook in the drawer of the desk. The first half of the notebook was filled with his schedule. There was nothing special about it. When she patiently flipped to the back, she saw more than 10 diary entries. Today, Sister Chen said that she wanted to introduce her daughter to me. I met her. She's as beautiful as an angel who barged into my life. I fell in love with her at first sight. I'm in a bad mood today because I heard that Zisu has a boyfriend and she loves him very much. Why did God let me meet the girl of my life, but let her fall in love with another man? I asked Sister Chen to go hiking. As expected, Sister Chen brought Zisu along. I was very happy, but I didn't dare to show it. I could only silently watch her from behind. Since she only treats me as an older brother, then I'll be her older brother. But why does my heart feel so bad? Yi Zisu flipped through several diary entries. They were all related to her. Only then did she realize that Xiao Yihan had fallen in love with her a long time ago. He had always been silently watching her from behind. Even that time when she met him in the underground parking lot of Jiang Tianhao's company, he had done it on purpose. He comforted her when she was sad. He wiped away her tears when she cried. When she took revenge on Jiang Tianhao, he reached out to help her. When everyone scolded her for being shameless, he stood bravely by her side. He had done so much for her, but he had always kept it from her. She sniffled and her tears fell uncontrollably. Her tears turned the ink black. She quickly wiped the tears on the paper and continued reading. Couldn't fall asleep. My mind was filled with her. I wondered what she was doing now. I didn't dare to call her because she was already married to another man. Felt terrible and drank 2 glasses of wine. Sister Chen suddenly called. She said that she was drunk and was at a bar. She asked me to pick her up. When I arrived, Sister Chen was surrounded by a few men. I helped her out and wanted to send her home. She didn't want to go back. She said that she didn't want others to see her. I took her to my apartment. She was drunk and wanted to drink with me. I was also very bored, so I drank a few glasses with her. I didn't expect that after I got drunk, I would mistake her for Zisu. After I sobered up, I saw Sister Chen lying in my arms. I almost broke down. I didn't know what to do. Sister Chen said that we should treat it as if nothing had happened. Everything would go back to how it was before. I agreed, but I knew that we could never go back to how it was before. I was dirty. I didn't deserve the pure Zisu. Attention Hongcha 866. Chapter 892. I thought that night was just a nightmare, but I didn't expect Sister Chen to come looking for me again. She said she was very lonely and wanted someone to keep her company. She said she liked the young and energetic me. I wanted to reject her, but she threatened me and said she would tell Zisu about what happened that night. In the end, I compromised. I didn't want Zisu to know about my unbearable side, even though she didn't care about me at all. Yi Zisu gritted her teeth so hard that they almost shattered. She had never hated Shen Tingfang so much. How could her biological mother do such a despicable thing? I was forced again. I hated myself so much that I wanted to numb myself with alcohol. I didn't expect to meet Tang Feng and Zissou. Zissou was drunk and was held in Tang Feng's arms. I was jealous and snatched her away from him. She lay in my arms and cried. She cried that Jiang Tianhao cheated on her and betrayed her. She was the treasure in my heart, but she was ruined by another man. My heart was about to break. I was very conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to protect her and give her happiness. On the other hand, I felt that I was dirty and unworthy of her. I was conflicted and in pain. Until one day, I found out that Jiang Tianhao was using domestic violence against her. That was when I made up my mind to snatch her away. Since other men couldn't give her happiness, then I would give her happiness myself. I asked her to go to a concert. I was already prepared to propose to her, but Sister Chen contacted me again. I was afraid that she would tell Zissou about us, so I had no choice but to go. I had no choice but to lie to Zissou. When I saw her disappointed expression, I hated myself for being so powerless. This was the last entry in the diary. Yi Zissou had already burst into tears when she read this. She clutched the notebook tightly in one hand and slammed her fist on the desk with the other. Each hit was heavier than the last. She didn't stop until the back of her hand was red and swollen. She tried to vent her emotions in this way, but it was useless. She was so miserable that she felt like dying. She no longer wanted to call that woman mother. What kind of mother was she to a lover who forced her daughter to marry? Yi Zissou waved her arms and pushed everything around her to the floor. Then, she only took a key and ran out of the room agitatedly. She wanted to go home immediately and confront Chen Tingfang face to face. Running to the underground parking lot, Yi Zissou's head, which had been clouded by anger, slowly cleared up. She remembered that she should have brought the notebook with her. Otherwise, Chen Tingfang would definitely deny it. She turned around and went upstairs. When she returned to Xiao Yihan's apartment, the study room was in a mess. The notebook that she had thrown away earlier was nowhere to be found. Yi Zissou couldn't find the notebook, so she copied the photos of the boat from Xiao Yihan's computer. At the Ji residence, Chen Tingfang was wearing sunglasses and lying on a hanging bed in the garden, comfortably sunbathing. When she heard footsteps, she opened her eyes and saw Yi Zissou standing beside her. She said unhappily, "Mom, I have something to tell you." Chen Tingfang took off her sunglasses and looked at her curiously. "What's wrong? Who provoked you?" Yi Zissou gritted her teeth and tried hard to control her emotions. She forced a smile. "Let's go back to the room and talk." The room was very quiet. The mother and daughter sat facing each other, and neither of them spoke first. After a while, Chen Tingfang's patience ran out. She frowned and said, "Zissou, what's wrong with you today? If you have something to say it quickly." Yi Zissou lowered her eyes and stared at the teacup in her hand to hide the deep anger in her eyes. She said softly, "Mom, I want to be with Xiao Yihan. What do you think?" "Xiao Yihan?" Chen Tingfang's voice suddenly rose, and she almost jumped up from the sofa. She immediately realized that she had overreacted, so she lowered her voice and said gently, "Zissou, I thought you didn't like Xiao Yihan. Why did you suddenly mention him?" Yi Zissou pursed her lips. "I think he's quite good. He's handsome, capable, and has a good personality. He doesn't mind that I was divorced before, and—" She paused and suddenly looked up. Her dark eyes stared straight at Chen Tingfang and she smiled. "And I like him." Chen Tingfang was shocked. The mother and daughter actually fell in love with the same man. Oh my God, just thinking about it made her feel ridiculous. Her nails dug deep into her palms. She forced herself to calm down and said slowly, "Zissou, are you serious? You've fallen in love with Xiao Yihan?" Yi Zissou's smile became brighter. She nodded and said sweetly, "Yes, Mom. Yihan likes me too. We're even planning to get married." "No, that's impossible. I mean, even if you two like each other, you should ask for the opinion of your family." Chen Tingfang's expression was extremely ugly. Her heart was in a mess. How could this be? Could it be that Yihan really fell in love with Zissou? This thought was about to drive her crazy. She stood up and held her forehead with one hand. She said frantically, "I'm not feeling well. I'll go back to my room first." Let's talk about you and Xiao Yihan in 2 days. She walked to the door in a flustered and helpless manner. Yi Zisu looked at her back and sneered. She said softly, Mom Tahan and I are truly in love. You'll definitely give us your blessings, right? Chen Tingfang's body stiffened and she stopped in her tracks. Her throat was dry and uncomfortable. She wanted to say, yes, but her heart felt like it was being cut into pieces. She couldn't say it, so she ran out of the door in a flustered manner. You're trying to steal your own daughter's man. You're really shameless. Yi Zisu clenched her fist and held a USB drive in her palm. If Chen Tingfang wanted to fight to the end, she would no longer care about their mother-daughter relationship and fight to the death. In short, Xiao Yihan was hers. He was definitely hers. Chen Tingfang called Xiao Yihan's phone again and again, but all she got was, the number you have dialed is switched off. She anxiously and angrily threw her phone on the floor. She paced around the room in frustration. What should she do? If Zisu and Yihan were truly in love, should she give them her blessings? However, when she thought about how she could no longer have anything to do with Yihan, she felt so miserable that she wanted to cry. Yihan. Where are you? Why aren't you picking up the phone? Chen Tingfang had completely lost the rationality that a woman her age should have. She held a lady's cigarette between her fingers. As she smoked, she grabbed her hair in frustration. She looked like she had aged a few years in an instant. Before she knew it, the sky had turned dark. It was not until the servant knocked on the door and invited her downstairs for dinner that she snapped out of her daze. She said tiredly, I'm not feeling well. I won't be going downstairs. She sighed deeply and opened the window to ventilate the room. She wanted to get rid of the smell of smoke as soon as possible. She said that she was not feeling well and that Ji Bowen would definitely come upstairs to see her later. Sure enough, as soon as she laid down in bed, Ji Bowen opened the door and came in. I heard that you're not feeling well. Do you want me to call the doctor? She coughed weakly. It's okay. I just have a slight cold. I'll be fine after a nap. Bowen, you can sleep in the guest room tonight. I'm worried that you'll be infected. Ji Bowen said, I'll get the servants to make you a bowl of porridge. Okay, sorry to trouble you. Hurry down and eat. Don't let the children wait too long. Okay, rest well. After the soft sound of the door closing, the room returned to a dead silence. Chen Tingfang's eyes welled up and tears rolled down her cheeks. Ever since she got together with Yihan, her relationship with Ji Bowen had become even colder. Even if the two of them were lying on the same bed, they had never done anything like husband and wife. The phrase, bedfellows, was used to describe the two of them. She quickly wiped away her tears and picked up her phone. Unwilling to give up, she dialed Xiao Yihan's number again. She did not expect that the call would go through this time. The moment she heard Xiao Yihan's voice, her tears almost fell again. Her voice was thick and nasal as she asked anxiously, where are you? I want to see you. Tingfang, I told my parents about us. I thought that they would support us, but I didn't expect them to send bodyguards to tie me up. His magnetic voice was filled with loneliness as he said, Tingfang, I told my parents about us. I thought that they would support us, but I didn't expect them to send bodyguards to tie me up. Chen Tingfang was so anxious that she stomped her feet. What? Why are you so silly? Your parents definitely won't agree to our relationship. How are you now? Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine. The bodyguards stole my phone. I stole it while they were asleep. Tingfang, they're going to bring me back to America tomorrow. However, I won't let them succeed. I'll definitely escape. Wait for my news. Yihan, you must be careful. Between you and Zisu. Beep beep. The call was suddenly cut off. Chen Tingfang called again, but the phone was turned off. She was in a terrible mood. The bodyguards must have woken up and realized that Xiao Yihan was on the phone, so they took his phone away again. She was so annoyed that she stomped her feet. She was so anxious, but there was nothing she could do to help Xiao Yihan. Chen Tingfang suffered for the whole night, waiting for Xiao Yihan's news. However, after that phone call, the two of them did not contact each other again. The next morning, she went downstairs for breakfast with 2 dark circles under her eyes. Ji Yuchi and Ji Yunhan had already finished eating and went to school. Ji Bowen had also gone to the office. Only Yi Zissou was left at the dining table. Yi Zissou looked up at her. "Good morning." "Good morning." Chen Tingfang felt guilty and did not dare to look into her eyes. She pulled out a chair and sat down. Yi Zissou took a sip of milk and laughed softly. "Mom, did you not rest well last night? Is there something on your mind?" "No, I'm just a little uncomfortable." "Is that so? I thought you were still thinking about me and brother Ihan." Yi Zissou spread jam on the bread as she said, "Oh, by the way, I mentioned Ihan and I to Uncle Ji last night. Uncle Ji said that as long as Ihan's character is good and trustworthy, he won't interfere with us. I just realized that Uncle Ji is actually a very good person." With that, she nodded affirmatively and asked with a smile, "Mom, what do you think?" Chen Tingfang smiled stiffly. "Yes, you're right." Yi Zissou's smile faded and she said calmly, "Mom, I hope you won't interfere with us. If you insist on interfering, I might do something bad." Chen Tingfang's expression changed and she stared at her in disbelief. "What do you mean by that?" Attention Hongcha 866. Chapter 893. Yi Zissou said calmly, "Nothing much. I just want to protect my happiness." "Mom, I call you Mom, and I hope you're worthy of this title. Isn't it your responsibility as a mother to make your daughter happy?" Chen Tingfang's heart thumped wildly. She seemed to understand something from her daughter's indifferent expression. Her throat tightened and her voice was dry. "Zissou, are you misunderstanding something?" Yi Zissou looked at her coldly. "You know very well whether it's a misunderstanding or not. You really disgust me." She deliberately emphasized the word, disgust, like she was grinding it between her teeth. Chen Tingfang felt a chill all over her body. Yi Zissou used her fork to stab the strawberry jam spread on the bread. The red strawberry jam looked like fresh blood gushing out of her body. She glanced at Chen Tingfang provocatively from the corner of her eyes and threw the fork on the plate with a clang. She stood up arrogantly. "I'm full. Enjoy your meal." "What kind of attitude is that?" Chen Tingfang pressed a hand to her chest. She was so angry that her liver hurt. Yi Zissou glanced at her disdainfully and sneered. She didn't want to argue with her anymore. On the way to school, Yi Zissou called Xiao Ihan. The phone rang for a long time, but no one picked up. She didn't give up and called again and again. Finally, Xiao Ihan's deep and hoarse voice came from the other end of the line. "We're done." Yi Zissou gripped the steering wheel tightly and gritted her teeth. "The things you said are nothing to me. Xiao Ihan, I don't mind. I just want to be with you. Before I say so, who allowed you to say so?" The person on the other end of the line was silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed and said in an extremely bleak voice, "I'm sorry. I can't accompany you anymore. I'm about to board the plane and fly to America. I'll never come back. Take care." As soon as he finished speaking, he hung up without waiting for her reply. Yi Zissou stared blankly at the road ahead. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. He was going back to America? Never to return? What about her? She slammed on the brakes and stopped the car by the side of the road. She frantically dialed his number. The cold female voice on the other end of the phone reminded her that the other party had turned off the phone. Yi Zissou angrily punched the steering wheel and kicked the car. He clearly loved her. Why did he have to leave? But she suddenly thought of someone. Chen Tingfang. It was her. She must be the one who threatened Ihan. In a fit of rage, she threw all thoughts of school and classes to the back of her mind. She turned the car around and slammed on the accelerator, heading back to the Ji residence. Chen Tingfang finished her breakfast and faced the empty room unhappily. She couldn't wait for Xiao Ihan's news and was very anxious. She didn't know if he had successfully escaped. The door was suddenly slammed open. Chen Tingfang was shocked. She quickly looked up and saw Yi Zissou standing at the door with a livid face. Her eyes, which were similar to hers, were filled with resentment. Chen Tingfang felt Ihan's heart when she saw her venomous glare. She immediately stood up and asked with concern, "Zissou, why are you back?" Yi Zissou clenched her teeth and stared at the woman who gave birth to her. She walked towards her step by step and finally stopped 3 steps away. She squeezed a few words out of her teeth. Ihan is going back to America. Did you force him? Chen Tingfang's eyes widened. She quickly reacted and forced a smile. His parents are in America. It's only right for him to go back. What does it have to do with me? Don't pretend anymore. Yi Zisu broke down emotionally and shouted hysterically, I know everything. It's about you and him. You must have forced him to leave. We were so in love. Why did you have to interfere? Tell me. Chen Tingfang's face was pale. Her fingers trembled slightly. She turned her face slightly and pursed her lips. She didn't know what to say. Yi Zisu threw herself at her. She grabbed her arm and shook it vigorously. She cried and screamed, Give him back to me. Hurry up and give him back to me. Zisu, calm down. I really didn't force him to leave. When Chen Tingfang saw her daughter's grief-stricken appearance, she didn't feel good either. She tried to persuade her, but her daughter didn't appreciate it. She raised her tear-stained face and questioned sternly, If you didn't force him, why did he leave? He said that he loved me and wanted to marry me. If you didn't interfere, we would have been married. Chen Tingfang's head was spinning from Yi Zisu's shaking, and her ears were suffering from the noise. In a moment of frustration, she wanted to push Yi Zisu away, but Yi Zisu held on tightly. She didn't know why, but she raised her hand and slapped Yi Zisu. Following that, she shouted angrily, Enough! Stop making noise! Chen Tingfang suddenly flipped out. Yi Zisu was shocked and let go of her shoulder. She sighed and said earnestly, Zisu, do you really think that everything is Mom's fault? If it's not your fault, then is it my fault? He's about to propose to me. I really love him. Yi Zisu's tears flowed down again as she thought of the sad part. Mom, if you still treat me as your daughter, then call him back. I can't leave him. Chen Tingfang had a headache and her eyes flickered. How many times do I have to say it before you understand? I really didn't ask him to leave. She found it hard to explain the real reason Xiao Yihan left. Yi Zisu didn't let it go. Then why did he leave? Chen Tingfang flew into a rage out of humiliation and said angrily, That's enough. I said I don't know, so I don't know. Even if you ask me 100 times or 1,000 times, I still don't know. Yi Zisu stared at her as if she was looking at a stranger for a long time. Suddenly she laughed out loud. Her laughter was strange and eerie, and her eyes flashed with a wild light. Her lips parted slightly, like a venomous snake, and she said eerily, Chen Tingfeng, from today onwards, we're no longer mother and daughter. In the future, I don't have a shameless mother like you anymore. Every word that came out of her mouth was like a sharp arrow that fiercely pierced Chen Tingfang's chest. She clenched her fists tightly and her voice was sharp because of urgency and anger. You're crazy. I'll give you one more chance. Take back what you just said. Yi Zisu sneered. Words that have been spoken are like spilled water. They can't be taken back. I don't want to be your daughter anymore. Chen Tingfang's face was as pale as a sheet. Her voice trembled as she said, Are you really going to abandon our mother-daughter relationship for a man? That's right. Yi Zisu was 2 centimeters taller than Chen Tingfang. She lifted her chin slightly and stared disdainfully at Chen Tingfang. She said coldly, You're even stealing your daughter's man. What kind of mother are you? After saying those words, she didn't bother to look at Chen Tingfang anymore. She turned around arrogantly and left, leaving Chen Tingfang standing there like a soulless puppet. The man she loved the most had left her hometown and would never come back because of her mother. That kind of heart-wrenching pain made Yi Zisu feel almost hopeless. She had been sitting in front of the bay window for the whole morning. She called Xiao Yihan's phone countless times, but it was always turned off. In the end, she stiffly sent a text message. Yihan, I really love you. Just take it as me begging you. Come back, okay? If you don't want to come back, tell me your address. I'll go find you. I miss you so much. I really miss you. After waiting for the whole afternoon and then the whole night, she finally received a call from an unknown number in the wee hours of the morning. It was Xiao Yihan's voice. Zisu, I've arrived in America. Yi Zisu excitedly got up and said anxiously, Yihan, Did you see my text message? If you don't want to come back, I'll go to America to find you. Can you tell me your address? The sound of heavy traffic could be heard on the other end of the phone. She could tell that he was driving. Have you really thought it through? Give up everything in China and come to America? I've thought it through. As long as I can be with you, I don't mind anywhere. Don, I miss you so much. I miss you too, baby. His voice was much gentler. It's early in the morning in China. Did I disturb your rest? No. Actually, I've been waiting for your news. Yi Zisu's heart was filled with sweetness as if she had eaten honey. After acting coquettishly for a while, she said, quickly tell me your address. I'll get a visa as soon as possible and come find you. His voice was unbelievably gentle. Okay, my address is... A loud bang interrupted his voice. Yi Zisu heard the loud bang from the phone and her heart almost stopped. Her voice trembled as she called out, what's wrong? Ihan? There was no response. Yi Zisu screamed at the top of her lungs. Each scream was more mournful than the last. She realized that something bad had happened and a huge panic engulfed her. Her whole body trembled uncontrollably. Hurry up and answer me. Nothing can happen to you. Nothing can happen to you. After a long, long time, almost as long as a century, Yi Zisu finally heard Xiao Yihan's weak voice intermittently. Cough, cough. I'm sorry. I love you. The deathly silence returned to her ears. Yi Zisu felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. She was so cold that her body kept trembling. She kept muttering, nothing will happen to you, Han. Nothing will happen to you. Wait for me to go to America to find you. I'll go to America to find you immediately. The sound of police cars and ambulances could be heard from the phone. A man said in fluent English, Hello, this gentleman has been in a car accident. We're trying to resuscitate him. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This gentleman's heart has stopped because of excessive blood loss. The phone landed heavily on the floor. Yi Zisu did not hear what the man said at all. There were only a few words lingering in her mind. His heart has stopped. She hugged her head and cried in the wind. No, her miserable cries were particularly clear in the silent night. Even though the villa's soundproofing was good, her sorrowful cries could still be heard in other rooms. Ji Yuqi was in a deep sleep. When she heard the cries in a daze, she turned over and continued to sleep soundly. Ji Yunhan was woken up. He scratched his hair in frustration and covered his head with the quilt. Chen Tingfang hesitated for a while. She put on a jacket and walked to Yi Zisu's room. She gently knocked on the door. Zisu, are you okay? Welfare, Song Shu 566. Chapter 894. There was no other response in the room except for waves of miserable cries. Perhaps she still couldn't accept the fact that Xiao Yihan had left. Chen Tingfang sighed sadly and silently turned to leave. At a time like this, Zisu definitely didn't want to see her. Yi Zisu locked herself in her room for an entire day. She didn't eat or drink, and no matter who came to persuade her, she wouldn't open the door. When she came out of her room the next day, everyone, including Ji Yuqi, was shocked. She was thinner than before. She was wearing a long white dress, her face was pale, and her long hair hung down to her shoulders. She had a dark and gloomy aura around her as she floated down from upstairs like a female ghost. Everyone who was eating stared at her in a daze. Ji Yunhan almost choked on his milk and mumbled, Second sister, what's wrong with you? Ji Bowen coughed and said, Zisu, you must be hungry. Come and have breakfast. As the head of the family, he was also very curious as to why Zisu had become like this. However, it was obvious that she had suffered a huge blow, so it was better not to remind her of her sad past. Yi Zisu's indifferent gaze swept across everyone and finally landed on Chen Tingfang. A hint of hatred flashed in her eyes as she said indifferently, No need. You guys eat. I want to go out for a walk. Her thin figure disappeared from everyone's sight, and the atmosphere froze for a moment. Chen Tingfang forced a smile and said to Ji Bowen, It's okay. She's just in a bad mood. Let her go out for a walk. Jiuchi lowered her eyes and quietly cut the fried sausages. The sharp blade of the knife cut the sausages again, and the corners of her lips curved into a faint smile. Yi Zhisu drove to the apartment where Xiao Yihan used to live. She opened the door with the key she left behind. The room still had its original decorations. They used to spend many happy times here. In the empty room, she could still hear his laughter and smell the faint fragrance of grass and wood on his body. Her tears fell once again. She covered her mouth and cried silently. "Dehan, why are you so cruel? After I fell in love with you, you left me alone." She didn't know how long she had been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she almost couldn't open them. She hadn't eaten for a long time, which caused her blood sugar to be low. Her vision turned black. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes to rest for a while before she felt slightly better. The study was still as messy as it had been the other day. She squatted on the floor and searched everywhere, trying to find the notebook that Xiao Yihan had left behind. However, after searching the entire study, she could not find it. She did not know where it had gone. She wanted to keep his personal belongings as a memento, but he didn't like to take photos. There was not a single photo in the room. He had taken all the clothes in the wardrobe with him. Other than the furniture, there was only a computer left. She turned on the computer with a pained and desperate heart. She flipped through the photos of him and Chen Tingfang. Her heart was filled with hatred. If it wasn't for Chen Tingfang forcing him, he wouldn't have left China and wouldn't have gotten into a car accident in America. It was all Chen Tingfang's fault. She stared at Chen Tingfang's familiar face in the photos and wanted to bite her to death. At Yingcheng International Airport, a tall and handsome man with a pair of sunglasses rested on the bridge of his nose. His right hand was pulling a suitcase and his left hand was in his trouser pocket. He was leisurely waiting to board the plane. With such a handsome face, he attracted a lot of attention. Even the stewardess took a few more glances at him. If Yi Zhisu saw him, she would definitely faint from shock. This was because he was Xiao Yihan, who had died in the car accident. Before boarding the plane to New York, Xiao Yihan took off his sunglasses and took one last look at the city. There was a hint of nostalgia in his dark eyes and his sexy thin lips were slightly curved. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. The plane had not taken off yet. He sat by the window and looked at the city that he had lived in for many years. There was a hint of disappointment in his heart, but more than that, he was looking forward to a new life. His slender fingers swiped on his phone and answered the call. His lips curled into a faint smile. "Miss, the mission is complete. You just have to wait for the results." Jiuchi was driving and had a Bluetooth earpiece in his ear. He smiled when he heard what Xiao Yihan said. "Sure, I've never doubted your ability. Xiao Yang, the doctor said that Anne's eyes are recovering well. If you hurry over, you can accompany her to remove the gauze." Xiao Yihan, whose real name was Xiao Yang, smiled wider and said in a warm voice, "I want to be the first person Anne sees after she recovers her sight." After saying that, he paused and said slowly, "Yuchi, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for us." Jiuchi laughed softly. "Don't be too touched. I'm just doing what I should according to our deal." Xiao Yang's eyes sparkled. He knew that she did not need his gratitude, but he would never forget her kindness. When Xiao Yang was in junior high school, Father Xiao drove a car borrowed from a friend and took the whole family out to play. Unexpectedly, he was so tired that he drove and got into a car accident. Father Xiao and Mother Xiao were seriously injured and died. His sister, Xiaoan, was only 8 years old when she lost her eyes and could no longer see this colorful world. Since then, Xiao Yang and his sister relied on each other. Their relatives helped them, but as they grew older and their expenses increased, their relatives gradually stopped visiting. Xiao Yang chose to drop out of high school and work 2 jobs every day to support himself and his sister. He was good-looking, so many people harassed him when he was working. Finally, one day, he walked into a nightclub with the idea of saving money for his sister's surgery. He was good-looking, young, and innocent, and quickly won the favor of the female customers. The store also spent a lot of effort to cultivate him into a graceful, elegant, and well-spoken young master, causing the customers to flock to him like a flock of ducks. He was the number one in the store and could even choose his own female customers. He saved a lot of money, but he still couldn't do the surgery for his sister because the success rate of the same surgery in the country was too low, and he couldn't wait for a suitable cornea. Xiao Yang would always remember the day Jiuqi came to him. He thought that she was no different from those rich girls who went to nightclubs to indulge themselves and look for excitement, but she didn't. She took off her sunglasses, revealing a pair of intelligent and charming eyes. She smiled and said, "Xiao Yang, do you want your sister to regain her sight?" He couldn't refuse her help. He signed an agreement with her. She would find the best hospital and the best doctor for and help her regain her sight, and pay all the expenses during this period. Not only did she do it, but she also bought an extra apartment for the siblings to live in. She even helped them get a green card so that they could stay in the United States and start a new life. Xiao Yang remembered everything Jiuqi did for him. He swore that if he had the chance, he would repay her. According to the agreement, Xiao Yang deliberately got close to Chen Tingfang, seduced her, and got evidence of her infidelity. He also instigated the relationship between Chen Tingfang and Yi Zhisu, causing them to turn against each other. Thinking of this, he took out a black notebook from his bag. It was the notebook that Yi Zhisu couldn't find for a long time. It recorded his love for Yi Zhisu and his slander of Chen Tingfang. Of course, he wouldn't let Yi Zhisu keep such written evidence. When he got off the plane, he would destroy it with his own hands. From then on, Xiao Yihan would completely disappear from the world. The one who would get a new life would be him, Xiao Yang. After ending the call, Jiuqi narrowed her eyes slightly and the corners of her lips curled up. "Yi Zhisu, don't let me down. Please work hard to fight with your mother." Yi Zhisu didn't let her down. In a state of sadness and anger, she sorted out the photos of Chen Tingfang and Xiao Yihan and sent them to Ji Bowen's office anonymously. Of course, Yi Zhisu didn't lose her mind. She wouldn't publicize it and let everyone know. That would also affect her own reputation. Ji Bowen opened the package and saw the photos inside. He was so angry that his blood pressure rose and he almost fainted. His fingers trembled as he flipped through the photos. Because of the angle of the photos, Chen Tingfang's face was exposed in each photo, so no one would mistake her for someone else. As for the wild man's face, he didn't know if the photographer did it on purpose, but he didn't expose his face at all, so no one could recognize who he was. It was only a dozen or so photos, but it took him a full hour to finish reading them. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes were burning with anger. His cold and handsome face was covered with dark clouds, which was very frightening. Ji Bowen didn't even care about the meeting in the afternoon. He took the photos and went home angrily. When he found Chen Tingfang, she was entertaining a few rich ladies at home. The four of them gathered together to play mahjong. Chen Tingfang saw his livid face and knew something was wrong. She quickly smiled and said, "Honey, why are you back? I invited a few friends to play at home. This is Mrs. Lin, Mrs. Wang, Mrs. Zhang." Ji Bowen stood at the door like a black-faced deity. He didn't greet the other ladies. Mrs. Lin was the best at reading people's expressions. She quickly smiled and said, "I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. I lost terribly today." "Good, I'm tired too. Sister Chen, Mr. Ji, will take our leave first." The three madams tactfully said their goodbyes and left. Ji Bowen let out a deep N and didn't say any more pleasantries. Chen Tingfang hurriedly had the servants send the three of them off. The living room quickly returned to silence. Chen Tingfang knew that he didn't like her playing mahjong at home. She smiled awkwardly and said, "Hubby, I'm sorry. They said they wanted to come to our house to play, and I didn't want to refuse. Don't worry, I won't let them come over next time." Ji Bowen ignored her deliberate flattery. His face was so gloomy that water could be wrung out. He glanced at her coldly and said, "Come upstairs with me." Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 895. Chen Tingfang felt uneasy as she followed him into the study. Just as she closed the door, a stack of photos came flying at her face. Her body trembled and she instinctively stepped back, but her cheek was still scratched by the sharp edges of the photos. The photos scattered in the air like snowflakes and slowly drifted to the ground. One of them landed by her feet. She stared at the photos in shock, her heart filled with panic. Of course, she remembered them. Xiao Yihan had taken these photos and said that they were to be mementos. Why would they appear here? Ji Bowen pointed at her nose and scolded, "Chen Tingfeng, how shameless can you be? How could you do such a shameless thing? Are you worthy of me?" Chen Tingfeng stared at the photos in shock and said frantically, "I didn't do it, Bowen. I really didn't do it. Those photos must have been photoshopped. Someone must be trying to frame me." Ji Bowen slammed the desk and roared, "Chen Tingfeng, do you think I'm a fool? Who would be so bored as to frame you again and again?" Chen Tingfeng's eyes reddened and tears fell. "I don't know either. Bowen, why won't you believe me? I love you so much. How could I do anything to let you down? I really didn't do it. If you don't believe me, I can swear to God." She raised her hand and swore, "If I did anything to let you down, I'll be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Alright, even if you say a lot of things this time, I won't believe you again." She was the one who had shattered his trust in her. As a man, he couldn't tolerate being cuckolded by his wife. "Bowen?" Ji Bowen interrupted her and said sternly, "I warned you last time that if you dare to have any ill intentions, I'll divorce you. It seems like you ignored my words. I'll inform the lawyer now to draft the divorce agreement." As he spoke, he reached for the phone. Chen Tingfeng pounced on him agitatedly and held his right hand. She cried, "No, no, Bowen. Please don't divorce me. I really love you. I can't leave you. Let go. I will never believe your words again. This marriage must be divorced. I don't want Yuqi and Ahan to be killed by a heartless woman like you." Ji Bowen's heart was already filled with anger, and he wished he could immediately kick this woman out of the house. "Bowen, have you forgotten the promise you made 30 years ago? You said that you would love me forever and take care of me forever. Bowen, I haven't changed. I've always been the Tingfeng who treated you as my sky, but you've changed. You only have your daughter and son in your heart. I don't mind if you misunderstand me or hurt me, but please don't leave me." Chen Tingfeng hugged his arm and cried her heart out. She recalled their past and cried about his coldness. She confessed to him affectionately just to change her mind. Ji Bowen was upset. He did have feelings for her, but he couldn't stand her lying to him again and again. He had given her countless chances, but she had trampled on his feelings again and again. "Go away. It's too late to say anything now." He gritted his teeth and pushed her away. Chen Tingfeng followed his force and fell to the ground with a plop. Then she closed her eyes and fainted. Ji Bowen had just picked up the phone and didn't have time to call when he found her unconscious on the ground. Although he was angry, he wouldn't let her lie on the ground. He immediately carried her back to the bedroom and ordered the servant to call the family doctor over. The matter of contacting a lawyer was temporarily put aside. The family doctor quickly rushed over and checked. He said that Chen Tingfeng had a temporary cerebral ischemia caused by a moment of agitation. It was nothing serious and she would wake up after some rest. However, she had to pay attention to maintaining her emotional stability. Otherwise, it could cause serious consequences in the long run. Chen Tingfeng was lying on the bed and had yet to wake up. Ji Bowen was pacing around the room with a sullen face. Ji Yuqi, who had heard the news, saw this scene and said softly, "Dad, I heard from the doctor that Auntie is fine. Don't worry." Ji Bowen was helpless. He wasn't worried at all. He was troubled. However, as a father, he couldn't tell his daughter about Chen Tingfeng's affair. He could only nod his head. "Dad, don't stay here. Let Auntie have a good rest." Ji Yuqi held his arm. When she looked up at him, she saw that there were more white hairs on his head. Her heart felt as if it had been soaked in a bucket of vinegar. It was unbearably sour. Her eyes were hot and tears were about to flow out. She quickly looked down and forced the tears back. Ji Bowen sighed. "Okay, let's go out." The door slammed shut and the room returned to silence. Chen Tingfeng slowly opened her eyes. She let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had pretended to faint. Otherwise, Ji Bowen would already be discussing the divorce agreement with the lawyer. Then, she frowned again. Right now, she couldn't care less about who gave those photos to Ji Bowen. She had to think of a way to dispel Ji Bowen's thoughts of divorce. On the other side, Ji Yuqi held onto Ji Bowen's arm and accompanied him for a walk in the garden. The father and daughter walked quietly on the path. Ji Yuqi's eyes were slightly lowered. She was thinking about something. Originally, she wanted to borrow Yi Zisu's hand to make the whole city know about Chen Tingfang's affair so that she could no longer have a foothold in the upper-class society. However, she had changed her mind. If Chen Tingfang's scandal was made public, her father would also be implicated and would be laughed at by others. She couldn't let her father get hurt. She already felt guilty for letting Xiao Yihan seduce Chen Tingfang. Ji Bowen was still not used to his lively daughter snuggling up to him like an obedient little bunny. He pressed his right hand on the top of her head and said gently, "Chi-Chi, what are you thinking about?" Ji Yuqi looked up at him. Although he had a kind smile on his face, she could still see a faint gloominess between his brows. She felt sorry and guilty. She said softly, "Dad, I'm sorry. Did you get into trouble again?" Ji Bowen deliberately put on a stern face. Ji Yuqi hurriedly shook her head. Thinking that something was wrong, she nodded again. Ji Bowen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Did you get into trouble or not?" She didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked, "Dad, if I knew that someone was a bad person, but I still deliberately induced her to do bad things because she did bad things and ended up hurting others? Dad, am I wrong to do this?" Ji Bowen was startled as he looked at his daughter in front of him. Her eyes revealed a trace of confusion, as if she was a lost child. He naturally rubbed her hair and gently said, "Before I answer your question, answer me first. What is your purpose in doing this?" Ji Yuqi bit her lips. "I want to take revenge on that person and protect the people I care about. Only by completely destroying the relationship between Chen Tingfang and her father could she drive Chen Tingfang out of the Ji family. Moreover, she wanted Chen Tingfang and Yi Zisu to turn against each other and hurt each other. There was a kind of battle called killing with a borrowed knife, and there was also a kind of battle called killing without shedding a drop of blood." Ji Bowen's eyes moved slightly. He looked at her with a complicated expression and said meaningfully, "Since you want to protect the people you care about, I'm sure you'll be able to get through the harm. Chi-Chi, there's no such thing as right or wrong in this world. As long as you have a clear conscience, that's enough." Ji Yuqi's lips quivered a few times. She really wanted to tell him the truth, but when the words reached the tip of her tongue, she lost her courage. She avoided his deep gaze and said softly, "I understand, Dad." She didn't see that the moment she lowered her head, disappointment flashed across Ji Bowen's eyes. From Yuqi's words, he had already guessed who had sent those photos to him. However, since his daughter didn't want to say it, he wouldn't force her. At least, he knew that she had good intentions. In the master bedroom. "I heard that you're sick. I also heard that Uncle Ji wants to divorce you." The eerie and cold voice was right next to her ear. Chen Tingfang woke up abruptly. She opened her eyes and saw a magnified pale face. She was so frightened that she screamed and quickly moved back. Why are you hiding? I'm not going to eat you." Yi Zisu covered her mouth with one hand and laughed sinisterly. She moved back and sat on the chair next to the bed. Chen Tingfang was frightened by the pale makeup on her face. She didn't recover for a long time. She pointed at her face and said intermittently, "Wipe off the white powder on your face. You scared me to death. Teach, why do you care what makeup I put on?" Yi Zisu's cold gaze was glued to her. She curled her lips in disdain. "Pretending to be sick again? You're really something." Chen Tingfang's heart was filled with Yihan. She cried out involuntarily, "Zisu, I'm your mother. Do you really want to be enemies with me? I gave birth to you after carrying you for 10 months. I raised you painstakingly. Is this how you repay me? I've heard these words of yours for more than 20 years. My ears are getting calluses. You've always wanted to marry me off to a rich man. You just want to ride on my coattails. In your eyes, a daughter like me isn't as important as money. Don't make it sound like I've wronged you. You're the one who wronged me first. Chen Tingfang was so angry that her voice trembled. I admit that Yihan and I used to be together. But at that time, there was nothing between the two of you. When you said that you loved him, I also thought of backing out. I really didn't know that he went back to America. Why won't you believe me? Touch your conscience and ask yourself. All these years, when have I ever mistreated you? I've treated you like a treasure since you were young. I held you in my hands and was afraid that you'd fall. I kept you in my mouth and was afraid that you'd melt. Stop! Yi Zhisu impatiently interrupted her incessant chatter. She stood up and looked down at her condescendingly. Her gaze was cold as she said, "What you've just said is what a mother should do. What's there to be proud of? You caused Yihan's death. You caused the death of the person I love the most. We can never go back to the past." Hongcha 866. Chapter 896. Chen Tingfang grabbed her arm and said anxiously, "What did you say? What do you mean by causing Yihan's death? What happened to Yihan?" Yi Zhisu turned her head abruptly. Her cold gaze seemed to be laced with poison as she said fiercely, "I won't allow you to call Yihan by his name. You don't deserve it. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't have returned to America, and he wouldn't have gotten into a car accident. It's all because of you that he's dead." Chen Tingfang looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Her face turned pale as she shook her head in disbelief. "How could he? You must be lying to me." Yi Zhisu looked as if she had heard a funny joke. She laughed so hard that tears rolled down her cheeks. She shouted hysterically, "Lying to you? I also hope that it's a lie, but I heard it with my own ears. Yihan is dead. The man I love will never come back." Chen Tingfang had been waiting for Xiao Yihan's news. She didn't expect to hear that he was no longer alive. Her vision immediately turned black, and she slumped onto the bed. Seeing her heartbroken expression, Yi Zhisu was only moved for a second before she quickly regained her cold expression. From the moment Yihan passed away, there was no longer any mother-daughter relationship between her and Chen Tingfang. Chen Tingfang was disheartened at first. Later, she hugged the blanket and cried bitterly. She didn't even know when Yi Zhisu left. In the evening, Ji Bowen came upstairs, intending to continue discussing the divorce with Chen Tingfang. Chen Tingfang was in low spirits. Her eyes were red and swollen, and it was obvious that she had cried. She sat on the sofa listlessly and said calmly, "If you insist on getting a divorce and abandoning your child, I have no objections." Ji Bowen's eyebrows twitched. He asked in a low voice, "What do you mean?" She looked down and stroked her abdomen with her right hand. She smiled bitterly and said, "It's unbelievable, isn't it? I'm already so old, but I'm pregnant. Otherwise, why do you think I suddenly fainted after falling? This child is really lucky that his father didn't kill him." Her sarcastic tone made Ji Bowen very uncomfortable. At the same time, it evoked the guilt in his heart. He pursed his lips and said coldly, "It's still not certain if this child is mine. Do I need to remind you that we haven't slept together for more than a month?" Chen Tingfang seemed to be exhausted. She leaned on the soft cushion and said weakly, "It's your memory's bad. A month and a half ago, you went to a party and drank. And you drank too much and to forget what you did. If you don't believe me, you'll do a paternity test after the child. Since you're pregnant, why did you only tell me now? Is this an excuse you made up at the last minute?" Chen Tingfang shook her head helplessly. "I only found out today. I didn't have time to tell you, and you. Besides, I can lie to you about being pregnant for a while, but can I lie to you for 10 months? Forget it. I'm very tired. I don't want to argue with you." Ji Bowen was speechless. If she was really pregnant with his child, of course, he couldn't divorce her. If word got out, people would only say that he, Ji Bowen, had abandoned his wife and child. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll accompany you to the hospital tomorrow for a prenatal checkup." Accompanying her to the hospital for a prenatal checkup sounded nice, but he actually wanted to see if she was pregnant or not. Chen Tingfang sneered inwardly, but she wasn't afraid. She had already made arrangements in the afternoon. The director of the obstetrics and gynecology department in the city hospital was a friend of her cousin, Lu Jianfeng. It was only a matter of minutes for him to forge a fake prenatal checkup report. Mrs. G is already 7 weeks pregnant. For an elderly woman like Mrs. G, the risk of pregnancy is higher. You have to maintain a good mood and do a good prenatal monitoring and checkup. Yang Hao, the director of the obstetrics and gynecology department, said to Ji Bowen and his wife. Chen Tingfang couldn't hide the joy on her face. She kept asking about things she should take note of, as if it was her first pregnancy. Ji Bowen didn't look good. He already had 2 children, and he didn't have much hope for the child in Chen Tingfang's belly. Besides, the child might not be his own. He felt frustrated at the thought of that. After Chen Tingfang and Yang Hao finished talking, Ji Bowen asked Yang Hao alone, "Dr. Yang, is there any way to do a paternity test before a pregnant woman gives birth?" Yang Hao was shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. He smiled and said, "You can do an amniocentesis DNA test after 16 weeks of pregnancy, but there's still a certain risk. Besides, Mrs. G is an elderly woman, so the risk is even higher, so I don't recommend doing that. It's best to wait until the baby is born." Yang Hao had received benefits from Chen Tingfang, and Lu Jianfeng had also given him a heads up. Naturally, he had to do his best to sway Ji Bowen and dispel any thoughts of Ji Bowen. Although Ji Bowen didn't like the child who came at the wrong time, he didn't want Chen Tingfang to take the risk, so he quickly gave up on the idea of doing a fetal test. However, he couldn't get a divorce for the time being. Ever since Chen Tingfang was pregnant, she had been staying at home obediently. When the ladies asked her out, she would reject them because she was pregnant. Soon, everyone knew about her pregnancy. Even if Ji Bowen was worried about what outsiders thought, he wouldn't ask for a divorce at this time, Chen Tingfang thought smugly. "Madam, this is the freshest cherries. It was just flown in from Canada. Try it." "Madam, the kitchen just made some nutritious porridge. Have some." "Madam," in the living room, the servants were scrambling to persuade Chen Tingfang to eat something. As for Chen Tingfang, she was nestled on the sofa with a pale face. She helplessly sighed, "I don't want to eat. I have no appetite." Ji Bowen was sitting beside her with a newspaper in his hand. He looked up at her and said, "It's been hard on you. Your pregnancy reaction is too strong. Wasn't it hard to pretend to be pregnant and vomit?" Chen Tingfang stroked her belly and smiled. Her eyes were gentle and kind. "Maybe I'm old and can't stand this little ancestor's torment. When he comes out, I'll definitely spank his little butt for tormenting me like this." Yi Zhisu chuckled and covered her mouth. "Mom, didn't you say that you could eat and drink when you were pregnant with me and that your pregnancy reaction was very small? Maybe you're pregnant with a little brother this time. It's obvious that boys and girls are different." Although she was joking, Chen Tingfang felt that it was a little harsh. She forced herself to smile. "It's hard to say whether it's a boy or a girl, but it's definitely tormenting. It's not even born yet and it's already tormenting me like this. Won't it be worse when it's born?" How could Yi Zhisu not understand that she was implying? The smile on her lips froze and her eyes turned cold. She cursed her in her heart countless times. Ji Yuqi said that she enjoyed watching the show, but she had more important things to do. After eating the fruit, she went upstairs. Just as she returned to her room, Liang Yu called. "Miss Ji, I've investigated the matter you asked me to investigate. The doctor who helped Chen Tingfang is called Yang Hao. He's Lu Jianfeng's elementary school classmate. He admitted that he took Chen Tingfang's bribe and helped her forge the pregnancy report. In short, Chen Tingfang isn't pregnant at all." She nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Liang Yu." Chen Tingfang didn't get pregnant earlier or later. She got pregnant when her scandal was exposed and her father wanted to divorce her. It was too much of a coincidence. It was so coincidental that it was suspicious, so she asked Liang Yu to help investigate. This time, she wouldn't do it herself. She would leave the task of chasing Chen Tingfang out of the Ji family to Yi Zhisu. Ji Yuqi's slender fingers played with a USB flash drive. The USB flash drive stored the video of Jiang Tianhao abusing Yi Zhisu. A few days later, Chen Tingfang accidentally found Yi Zhisu's laptop in Xiao Yihan's room. She immediately realized that Yi Zhisu had seen photos of her and Xiao Yihan being intimate on the computer. She had developed the photos and sent them to Ji Bowen. She never expected that the daughter she had raised would really lay a hand on her. She, who had suffered a huge blow, was furious and heartbroken. She couldn't help but call Yi Zhisu to her room. She pointed at her nose and scolded, "Are you still human? How could you harm your own mother? Even if I divorce Ji Bowen, what benefits can you get?" Yi Zhisu's face was distorted with anger. "Even if I can't get anything, I don't want to see you living comfortably. Why are you still living like a rich wife when the man I love is dead? You're crazy." Chen Tingfang was flustered and exasperated. She ruthlessly slapped her. "Hurry up and wake up." "Humph, I'm crazy. I've been crazy since Yihan died." Yi Zhisu covered her cheek with her hand and said coldly, "This slap is to repay you for raising me. From now on, I don't owe you anything. Take care of yourself. Don't let me catch you." Otherwise, she wouldn't let her have an easy time. Chen Tingfang was heartbroken by her daughter's heartlessness. 2 days after this incident, a video of Jiang Tianhao beating Yi Zhisu appeared on the internet. Some people even posted that the second daughter of the Ji family, Miss Yi Zhisu, had been sexually abused by her ex-husband ever since she got married. They also said that the reason they divorced was because Yi Zhisu couldn't stand Jiang Tianhao's abuse. The love story between a rich girl and a rich man was just a joke. Yi Zhisu and Jiang Tianhao had a low-key divorce, so many people didn't know about it. Now that their marriage was exposed, it immediately became a hot topic on the internet. Even some gossip media and magazines jumped in front of Yi Zhisu to ask her for confirmation. Needless to say, at school, everyone looked at her with colored glasses. People who hated her even created all kinds of rumors, saying that Jiang Tianhao abused her because she had an affair. Some people even said that Jiang Tianhao married her because she seduced him. Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 897. She was the victim, so why was she the one being blamed? Yi Zhisu was about to go crazy, but the person she hated the most was Chen Tingfang. She rushed back to the Ji family as fast as she could, and when she passed by the garden, she heard someone whispering, "It's amazing that Madam can still get pregnant at such an old age. Let me tell you, I suspect Madam is pretending. Didn't you see how well she's been at home recently? Shoo, someone's coming. Let's go." Yi Zhisu was in a hurry to settle the score with Chen Tingfang, so she didn't ask who was secretly discussing it. However, she took the words about fake pregnancy to heart. She ran all the way until she was in front of Chen Tingfang. Disregarding everything, she slapped her and scolded coldly, "B***H." Chen Tingfang was stunned by her slap. Then she was furious. "You bastard, how dare you hit me? I'm your mother." "Shut up. I don't have a vicious mother like you. You called me a bastard, but I think you're worse than a bastard. You keep saying that I'm your daughter, but have you ever considered me? You actually posted the video of Jiang Tianhao abusing me online, and you even let people say that I've been sexually abused by him for a long time. Have you ever thought about the consequences of doing this?" Yi Zhisu yelled hysterically. She had reached an agreement with Jiang Tianhao that she wouldn't expose the video of domestic abuse, and Jiang Tianhao wouldn't expose the evidence of her and her daughter's evil deeds. Now, what awaited her was Jiang Tianhao's revenge. She suddenly grinned. "Don't you want to have this child? Let's see how you're going to give birth." As soon as she finished speaking, she pushed Chen Tingfang hard. Chen Tingfang lost her balance and fell to the ground with a plop. Chen Tingfang was in so much pain that she gritted her teeth and pretended to hold her stomach. "Zhisu, calm down. I wasn't the one who exposed that video. You've really wronged me. It's useless no matter how you quibble." Yi Zhisu stood in front of her, waiting for her to bleed and lose the child in her stomach. Chen Tingfang knew her intentions and pretended to cry out, "Ouch, it hurts. My child, Zhisu, hurry up and call the doctor. Hee, it's better if the child is aborted." Yi Zhisu waited for a long time, but there was no bloody scene. She sneered and squatted in front of Chen Tingfang. "An ordinary pregnant woman might bleed from a fall, but you're so old that you're not hurt at all. Then, there's only one possibility, and that is that you're pretending to be pregnant. Am I right? Chen Tingfang's expression changed. Yi Zhisu confirmed her guess and said sarcastically, I knew it. You haven't been pregnant for so many years, but when Ji Bowen wanted to divorce you, you got pregnant. How lucky are you? Chen Tingfang's face turned pale. She gritted her teeth and said, I'm really pregnant. This child is tough, so you didn't kill it. Humph, I didn't expect you to admit it. She would expose her in front of Ji Bowen. After the domestic violence video was publicized, Jiang Tianhao's life became worse. He was laughed at by his male colleagues, regarded as a scourge by his female colleagues, and even criticized by his neighbors. He blamed all of this on Yi Zhisu. He wanted revenge. In the dark night, there were stars twinkling in the sky. Ji Yuqi clutched her handbag and walked alone on the tree-lined road of the capital university. A tall figure suddenly walked out of the woods and blocked her way. He called out in a deep voice, Yuqi. Although Ji Yuqi wasn't timid, she was still taken aback when someone suddenly appeared in front of her to block her way. She narrowed her eyes and used the dim light to size up the newcomer. He was immaculately dressed, and there was obvious fatigue between his handsome brows. There was already some stubble on his chin. She could tell that he had been having a bad time recently. She was expressionless and said lightly, Mr. Jiang, what can I do for you? Jiang Tianhao clenched his briefcase and took a step forward. Yuqi, even if we can't be lovers, we are still friends. Why are you so cold to me? Ji Yuqi took a step back and lifted her chin slightly. Don't come so close. I can hear you. Mr. Jiang, please tell me. Why are you looking for me? He hated her condescending tone and arrogant gaze. The veins on his forehead throbbed a few times. He tried to suppress his anger and said in a deep voice, Yuqi, I know you hate me. I really regret not rejecting Yi Zhisu back then. It wasn't until recently that I found out that she was vicious and did many things to hurt you. Ji Yuqi raised her eyebrows. He wanted to use her to deal with Yi Zhisu. Not bad. She chuckled. This joke isn't funny at all. Zhisu and I are good friends. How could she hurt me? Jiang Tianhao took out a USB flash drive from his briefcase. This is evidence of Yi Zhisu and her mother plotting to hurt you. It also has their conversation. Ji Yuqi glanced at the USB flash drive in his hand but didn't reach out to take it. She said expressionlessly, Since you already have the evidence, why are you only giving it to me now? Jiang Tianhao looked guilty. I'm sorry. Yi Zhisu and I hadn't divorced back then. She begged me to forgive her and said that she would never hurt you again, so I wanted to give her a chance. But now that she has returned to the Ji family, I'm worried that she will continue to hurt you, so I'm giving this to you. I want you to be vigilant and not be hurt by her again. What a perfect excuse. Unfortunately, Ji Yuqi didn't need the evidence, and she didn't want to be used by Jiang Tianhao. She smiled. Thank you for your concern. I'll be vigilant, but I don't need the evidence. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. Wait. Jiang Tianhao gritted his teeth, grabbed her arm and said, Yuqi, aren't you curious about what Yi Zhisu has done? Are you willing to be schemed against and hurt by her? That's my business. You don't have to worry about it. Ji Yuqi stared at his hand with a fierce gaze. He had never seen her like this before. He felt a chill in his heart and let go of his hand. As if she had been stained by something dirty, Ji Yuqi very naturally reached out and patted the place where he had grabbed her. She didn't say anything else and directly walked past him. What was there to be proud of? She was just a broken shoe that he had thrown away. Jiang Tianhao stared at her back as she walked away. He clenched his fists in anger. His hatred for the Ji family, Ji Yuqi, and Yi Zhisu continued to accumulate until it reached its peak. Ji Yuqi didn't take the bait, so Jiang Tianhao had no choice but to take action himself. He presented the evidence of Chen Tingfang and her daughter's evil deeds to Ji Bowen. Ji Bowen's anger turned into forbearance. As long as Chen Tingfang's child was not his, he would immediately divorce her and chase the troublemaker mother and daughter out of the Ji family. Chen Tingfang and her daughter didn't know about it yet. They only cared about fighting and tearing each other down. It was very lively. Ji Bowen was too lazy to care about them. Ji Yuqi couldn't wait for someone to make trouble for Chen Tingfang. Of course, she wouldn't stop them. She could only secretly add fuel to the fire. It was the weekend. Other than Yi Zissou, everyone was there. Ji Yuqi was bathing the Samoyed in the garden. Ji Bowen was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. Chen Tingfang was sitting beside him watching a Korean drama. She was holding a tissue and crying. Ji Yunhan was playing with his phone. When he heard Chen Tingfang sobbing softly, he curled his lips in disdain. He didn't know what was so good about those tear-jerking dramas. At this moment, Yi Zissou led a white-haired old doctor into the living room. Everyone looked up at her. She smiled and said, "Uncle Ji, Mom, this is Dr. Li. Dr. Li is the most famous Chinese doctor in Ying City. Mom, your pregnancy symptoms have been too severe recently. You can't eat anything. My heart aches when I see you like that, so I specially invited Dr. Li to take a look at you." Chen Tingfang hurriedly wiped the tears off her face and smiled unnaturally. "Zissou, I'm very happy that you care so much about me. However, I'm much better now. I don't need to trouble Dr. Li anymore." "How can that be? Pregnancy is a big deal. Moreover, you're at an advanced age. The risk is greater. Don't refuse anymore. Dr. Li, please take a look at my mom." Yi Zissou invited Dr. Li to sit opposite Chen Tingfang. Then, she said with a smile, "Mom, stretch out your right hand. Let Dr. Li take your pulse." Chen Tingfang cursed in her heart. If she had known that she had given birth to an ingrate, she would have strangled her to death the moment she was born. "There's really no need. I'm a little sleepy. I want to go upstairs and rest for a while." Chen Tingfang had just stood up. Before she could escape, Ji Bowen suddenly said, "Tingfang, since Dr. Li is already here, we can't let him come here for nothing. Let him take your pulse and prescribe some pregnancy medicine for you. Dr. Li, please." Dr. Li nodded. "Mrs. Ji, please stretch out your right hand." Chen Tingfang was anxious and couldn't find an excuse. She avoided his hand and hurriedly stepped back. Her knee hit the sofa's armrest and she staggered to the floor. She gritted her teeth and decided to use her arm as a support to fall to the ground. It would be best if she could scratch her skin and make some wounds to fool the doctor. Unexpectedly, a pair of arms firmly supported her back, supporting her entire body. Ji Yuqi's gentle voice came from behind her. "Auntie Chen, are you all right?" Chen Tingfang's smile was uglier than crying. I'm fine. Fortunately, you're here to support me." "That's right. You're pregnant now, so you have to be careful." Ji Yuqi smiled sweetly. "Auntie Chen, Dr. Li has been waiting for you for a long time. Let him take a look at your hand." "That's right, Mom. Don't let me down." Yi Zissou was smiling, but in Chen Tingfang's eyes, she was scarier than a venomous snake. Several pairs of eyes were on Chen Tingfang. Under everyone's gaze, she had no choice and no reason to refuse. She could only reach out her trembling hand. Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 898. Dr. Li put his finger on her wrist and closed his eyes to feel it. He opened his eyes slowly and looked helpless. No wonder the lady didn't want to let him take her pulse. He shook his head and said, "Mr. G, Mrs. G isn't pregnant. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave." Ji Bowen's expression changed a few times, but he finally calmed down and asked the butler to see the guests out. After Dr. Li left, the atmosphere in the living room froze. Chen Tingfang felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. She wanted to say something, but she swallowed her words when she saw Ji Bowen's dark face. Ji Bowen didn't fly into a rage as Yi Zissou expected, nor did he say anything. Instead, he picked up the phone and called the lawyer to come to the Ji residence. The lawyer was naturally to draft the divorce agreement. Chen Tingfang's face was pale and she screamed, "Bowen, listen to me. I really don't know what's going on." Ji Bowen looked tired. He waved his hand and said, "You don't have to say anything. We'll sit down and talk when the lawyer comes." Yi Zissou smiled in satisfaction. She knew that she wouldn't benefit from the divorce between Ji Bowen and Chen Tingfang, but it didn't matter. She just didn't want Chen Tingfang to be comfortable. Why should Xiao Yihan die because of her? Her reputation was ruined because of her, but she was still living comfortably? Ji Yuqi and Ji Yunhan looked at each other and found an excuse to leave. The siblings each rode a bicycle and walked side by side in the cool autumn wind. Ji Yunhan thought of something and smiled. Sister, you were the one who uploaded the video of Yi Zisu being abused by Jiang Tianhao, right? Where did you find it? Ji Yuqi's long hair fluttered in the wind. She blinked and said with a smile, Of course, I stole it from Qin Tingfang. What do you think? I did a good job of framing her, didn't I? Ji Yunhan held onto the steering wheel with one hand and gave a thumbs up with the other as he smiled. Well done, as expected of my sister. The laughter of the two echoed on the mountain road. The golden leaves danced in the air. The two bicycles leisurely traveled in this fairy tale-like scenery towards the sunset. After the children left, Qin Tingfang followed Ji Bowen into the study. She wanted to save their marriage, but Ji Bowen was determined. He refused to listen to her explanation, and he didn't want to maintain the marriage. The lawyer quickly arrived and said that Qin Tingfang was the one at fault for having an affair. According to the law, the innocent party could ask the guilty party for less or no share of the property. Ji Bowen remembered their old friendship, so he was not so heartless. He proposed to give 30% of all the property to Qin Tingfang and her daughter. This 30% was enough for Qin Tingfang and Yi Zisu to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. However, Qin Tingfang was ambitious and was not satisfied with the division of property. Since both sides had fallen out, she no longer pretended to be gentle and magnanimous. She insisted on sharing the property equally. Of course, Ji Bowen didn't agree. He worked so hard to build the business and wanted to leave it to his daughter and son. How could he give half of it to Qin Tingfang? Qin Tingfang sneered. I've been married to you for so many years. I helped you with the housework, took care of the children, accompanied you to socialize, and helped you open up the business circle. Your achievements today are also due to me. I ask for half of the property. That's what I deserve. Ji Bowen was infuriated by her shameless words. He said angrily, There are so many servants in the house. Since when did you need to do the housework yourself? Take care of the children? You still have the nerve to mention it. You framed Yuqi and Ahan time and time again. I haven't settled the score with you yet. You play mahjong every day, go shopping, and do beauty treatments. You call that socializing? Don't make people laugh their heads off. I won't give you 30% of the property, not a cent more. Qin Tingfang's face turned green and red after being scolded by him in front of the lawyer. Fortunately, she was thick-skinned and quickly calmed down. She said calmly, Okay, since we can't negotiate, let's meet in court. We'll see whose side the judge is on. Ji Bowen was furious. He slammed the table and said, Okay, let's meet in court. I'm not afraid of you. Because of the division of property, Ji Bowen and Qin Tingfang completely fell out. The two of them lived under the same roof and saw each other frequently, but they didn't speak more than 3 sentences a day. Yi Zisu was very self-aware. She kept a low profile and no longer hung around the two of them and annoyed them. She went to school during the day and went to nightclubs to pass the time at night. She indulged in a life of luxury and numbed her nerves. She wanted to use this opportunity to forget Xiao Yihan. The pure and innocent goddess of the past was already dead. The one who was alive now was an enchanting demoness who bloomed at night. She wore heavy makeup every day and shuttled through lively bars and nightclubs. She flirted with different people, went on a boat with different people, and woke up in different places. At first, this kind of life made her feel very excited. Slowly, she began to feel empty. It was like a boat that had lost its direction and was drifting in the sea. The man who had once pointed out the direction for her was no longer around. She was left alone in despair. During this period of time, Ji Yuqi's life was very relaxed. Qin Tingfang was busy fighting for property with Ji Bowen, and Yi Zisu was busy indulging in debauchery. For the time being, no one bothered her. Free Company was operating well. With Qing Sang in charge, she didn't need to spend too much energy. She couldn't be more relaxed. The cold December wind was biting cold. She wrapped herself in an apricot-colored windbreaker and walked to the parking lot. A familiar figure stood beside her car. He had a tall and straight figure, a handsome face, and sexy thin lips as he gazed deeply at her. Like a spring breeze, Ji-Yuqi's cold face was immediately adorned with a smile. She quickly walked forward and stretched out her arms to hug him. She leaned her head against his chest. "Aja, I missed you so much." Shenja wrapped her in his arms and kissed her forehead. His magnetic voice was full of warmth. "I missed you too." During the 3 days of his business trip, his mind was filled with her. The work that would have taken him 5 days to complete was shortened by him and his subordinates staying up late. They rushed back to her side as quickly as possible. The wind was cold outside, but it was as warm as spring inside the car. Ji-Yuqi sat in the front passenger seat. She leaned her right arm against the car window and tilted her head to look at Shinj. She couldn't hide the smile in her eyes. She secretly mocked herself in her heart. Was this what it meant to be apart for a day? The person she missed had suddenly appeared in front of her. She couldn't help but want to take a few more glances at him. Shenja turned his head to look at her. His deep eyes were full of smiles. "I'm off tomorrow. How about we go to Hawaii?" "Sure." Ji-Yuqi was mesmerized by his beauty and answered without hesitation. Shenja laughed softly. "Good girl." Ji-Yuqi seemed to have woken up from a dream. She held her forehead with one hand and said with a headache, "I can't. I have class tomorrow." Shenja freed a hand and rubbed her fluffy curly hair. He smiled and said, "Little fool, you can take the day off." Ji-Yuqi pouted unhappily. "But the exams are coming up. I'm worried that the teacher will highlight the important points if I'm absent." "It's okay. You can borrow Lin Yushi's class notes." Young Master Shin was like a kind grandmother wolf. He revealed an amiable smile and spared no effort to persuade her. "All right, young Master Shin. Seeing that you're so sincere, will accompany you overseas to relax. But when we're in Hawaii, you're not allowed to stare at other beautiful women. Beach bikinis and whatnot. They're 2 nosebleeds." Ji-Yuqi counted on her fingers and nagged at a certain someone before they even left the country. Shenja nodded good-naturedly and said seriously, "In my eyes, you're the most beautiful woman. I just have to look at you." Ji-Yuqi smiled. "Wow, you really know how to do things. I like it very much." "Since you like it so much, is there a reward?" The certain someone who was driving pointed at his cheek and glanced at her. His meaning was obvious. "Not now. Drive seriously." She knew a certain someone very well. Once she kissed him, it would not be as simple as a kiss. The car drove out of the city and wound around the mountain roads. Finally, it stopped outside the largest cemetery in the suburbs. The weather was gloomy and cold, without a trace of sunlight. The surrounding trees were lush, and it was silent. The cold wind blew, and the leaves rustled. Looking into the distance, there were black tombstones standing neatly in the garden. They could not see the end of the tombstones in a radius of 100 meters. It was eerie and solemn. Shenja held the lilies in one hand and held Ji-Yuqi's hand in the other as they walked on the tree-lined path. He held her hand tightly. His handsome face was cold and his thin lips were pursed tightly. There was grief and indignation in his eyes. Ji-Yuqi felt that something was wrong with him. She patted the back of his hand gently. He turned his head. Her lips were pursed gently. Even without any words, he could feel her comfort. His furrowed brows relaxed, and his tense body slowly relaxed. He held her hand tightly and explained gently, "Today is the anniversary of my mother's death." Ji-Yuqi pursed her lips coquettishly. "You should have told me earlier. Hurry up and help me see if Auntie will like me dressed up like this." With that said, she let go of his hand and twirled in front of him. She looked at him expectantly and even blinked her beautiful eyes as if to say, "Hurry up and praise me." His heart warmed. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her forehead lovingly. He said softly, "This is good. No matter how you dress up, Mom will like you." As long as it was something he liked, his mother would like it. Ji-Yuqi rubbed her cool cheek against his and said in a playful tone, "Hey, when you see Auntie later, tell her that I bought the lilies. Otherwise, Auntie will definitely think that I'm very immature." who would casually buy the lilies on their first meeting with their elders. But Shenja's heart was unbelievably soft. This was the first time he had stepped into this cemetery. The hatred in his heart had disappeared, and only warmth was left. Add Song Shu 566. Chapter 899. The two of them held hands as they walked down the long path and stopped in front of a black tombstone. The cold tombstone was inlaid with a picture of a young woman. Her features were picturesque and she looked very similar to Shenja. She was a typical Jiangnan woman, gentle and beautiful. Shenja squatted down and placed the lilies in front of the tombstone. He stroked the woman's picture with his fingertips and his thin lips curved gently. "Mom, I'm here to see you. The one standing beside me is Yuchi. She's your future daughter-in-law. She bought the lilies for you. Do you like them?" Yuchi's cheeks flushed red. She was just playing around to make him happy. She didn't expect him to say it in front of Mrs. Shin's tombstone. Would he be suspected of deceiving the deceased? She hurriedly squatted beside Shinja and explained with a smile, "Auntie, Aja actually bought the lilies for you. I was just joking with him. Don't be angry. The next time I come to see you, I'll definitely buy you the most beautiful flowers." Shen just stared at the woman on the tombstone and a smile appeared in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Mom, do you see that? Yuchi is a very good girl. You don't have to worry about me anymore." Yuchi's heart was filled with warmth. She patted her chest and promised, "Auntie, don't worry. I'll take good care of Shenja." Shenja's heart was as warm as spring. The smile on his lips deepened and he teased, "I should be the one saying that to you." Yuchi thought of her mother and her eyes darkened. She quickly regained her smile. "It doesn't matter who said it. We'll take care of each other anyway." You're right." He ruffled her hair and stood up holding her hand. The two of them stood quietly in front of the tombstone for a long time. It was getting late. Shenja held her hand and walked out of the tombstone. There were tall trees on both sides of the road. Fallen leaves covered the road like a thin golden carpet. The two of them walked alone, leaving behind a pair of backs that were leaning against each other. On the way home, Shenja was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. His voice was a little hoarse. "When I was 4 years old, my mother was pregnant with my brother. Just as she was about to give birth, Tao Shirin came with a big belly. She fought with my mother and pushed her to the ground. My mother passed away in labor that night. In less than a month, Shen Jianhao and Tao Shirin. At that time, Tao Shirin came to the door. His mother asked the servant to take him upstairs. He curiously hid on the stairs and peeked. He saw Tao Shirin scolding his mother and even saw her slap his mother. He desperately rushed downstairs, wanting to protect his mother. However, he was pushed to the ground by Tao Shirin. His mother wanted to help him up, but was also pushed by Tao Shirin. The floor was covered with blood. He lay there in a daze, not knowing what to do. The sharp-eyed servant immediately called for an ambulance, but still couldn't save his mother and the child. That pool of blood was like a nightmare that haunted Shinja throughout his youth. He hated himself and felt that he was the cause of his mother and little brother's death. Coupled with Tao Shirin's mischief, his personality became more and more withdrawn and he was less and less liked by Shen Jianhao. Ever since Tao Shirin's son, Xinyu, was born, he became the extra in the Shen family. If his grandfather hadn't brought him to live with the Qin family for a year and hired a psychiatrist to give him psychological guidance, he would have become an autistic child. Thinking back to that period of time, Shenja's eyes became colder and colder. He gripped the steering wheel harder and his whole body burst out with cold hatred. Although Yuchi knew that he didn't get along with Shen Jianhao in her previous life, she didn't know the inside story. Her heart ached and she reached out to touch his face and said softly, "You're no longer alone in the future. I'll be with you." After a long period of silence, he slowly said, "Okay." His voice was hoarse, but it carried an irresistible firmness. In his deep eyes, the hostility had already dissipated and was buried by cold arrogance and dominance. He would not allow Shen Jianhao to hurt the woman he loved. Hawaii Beach. The blue sky, the blue sea, and the sun was shining brightly. Beauties in bikinis were everywhere on the beach. Some were laughing and playing in groups of 3 or 5, while others were walking with their male companions. Ji-Yuchi was lying lazily under a sun umbrella with a glass of fresh orange juice in her hand, enjoying the beautiful leisure time. Behind her was a 5-star hotel in Linhai. At this moment, Shenja was having a video conference in the hotel room. It couldn't be helped. Who told the company to have a sudden problem? The subordinates didn't dare to act on their own and could only contact the boss. Ji-Yuchi finished her orange juice and swam on the beach for half an hour. Shenja still hadn't come. She thought that since he was in a meeting, she couldn't go back and disturb him. So, she walked into the small bar next to the hotel, intending to enjoy the air conditioning here. Just as she stepped into the door, a gust of cold air hit her. She wasn't used to it and reflexively stopped. She hugged her arms and shivered. The person walking behind her didn't expect her to stop suddenly and almost bumped into her. That person quickly reached out to support her shoulder and apologized in English. Ji-Yuchi turned around and said with a smile, "It's okay. It's my fault." When she saw the person's face clearly, the smile on her face froze, and her beautiful phoenix eyes suddenly shrank. The man in front of her was a Chinese, and meeting a Chinese in Hawaii was not a strange thing. What was strange was that the man she met was called Shinyu, and he was Shinja's half-brother. Shinyu and Shinja did not look alike at all. Shinja looked like his mother, Qin Yuelan, while Shinyu looked very much like Shin Jianhao. He was simply a younger version of Shin Jianhao. His facial features were handsome, and his nose bridge was very high. The tip of his nose was slightly hooked downwards, adding a bit of gloominess to his handsome face. Coupled with his eyes that were as sharp as a falcon's, it made him seem even more cold and indifferent. Even though he was smiling, Ji-Yuchi still felt that he was sinister and terrifying. She subconsciously raised her guard. While she was sizing up Shinyu, Shinyu was also sizing her up. She was wearing a bohemian dress and a sky-blue straw hat on her head. Her long, seaweed-like curly hair naturally draped over her shoulders. Her facial features were outstanding, and her entire face was breathtaking. As long as one looked at her, it would definitely be unforgettable. The long dress with thin straps revealed her beautiful swan-like neck, exquisite collarbone, and snow-white shoulders. Her entire body exuded the enchanting fragrance of a woman, causing the blood in his body to become restless. She was indeed a rare beauty. No wonder his cheap brother fell in love with her. Shinyu smiled and said in Chinese, "Miss, you're from China, right?" Ji-Yuchi's lips curled up, revealing a pleasantly surprised expression. "Yes, I didn't expect you to be from China too. What a coincidence." Shinyu's smile deepened. "Since we're so fated, can we have a cup of coffee together?" Wouldn't it be too inconvenient? Ji-Yuchi's gaze slid to the woman beside him. She was beautiful and sexy, with hot curves. She was wearing a short black skirt that just wrapped around her buttocks. Seeing Ji-Yuchi looking at her, she even put on a show of force and hugged Shinyu's arm. The pair of breasts in front of her chest were tightly pressed against his arm. This scene was so hot that it could cause people to have a nosebleed. Shinyu pulled back his arm without a trace and said in a calm tone, "This is my secretary, Anna. Anna, you can go back to the hotel first." Anna pouted in dissatisfaction. She wanted to act coquettishly and hug his leg, but Shinyu coldly glanced at her. She immediately cowered, quickly bowed her head, and respectfully answered, "Yes." Before leaving, while Shinyu wasn't paying attention, Anna fiercely glared at Ji-Yuchi. Obviously, she regarded Ji-Yuchi as an imaginary enemy. Ji-Yuchi expressed that he was shot even when he was lying down. Shinyu gentlemanly stretched out his arm and made an inviting gesture. "Please." "Thank you." The two chose a seat by the window, where they could see the blue sea, the beautiful coconut trees, and the beautiful bikini scenery on the beach. After ordering the coffee, Shinyu introduced himself in a gentlemanly manner. "I'm Shinyu. What's Mrs. name?" Ji-Yuchi pretended not to recognize him and reported his name with a smile. Shinyu stirred the coffee in the cup with a small spoon. A faint smile flashed across his cold, thin lips. His tone seemed to be a bit ambiguous. Sir, Mrs. Name is too estranged. Can I call you Yuchi? Okay, the name is for people to call. Mr. Shin, are you also here to travel? Yuchi felt a chill in her heart. If she didn't intend to probe his purpose, she would be too lazy to pay attention to him. Shin-yu shrugged, showing the humor of an English gentleman. You'd better call me Shin-yu. Otherwise, I'll mistakenly think that I'm still negotiating with a client. You know, work is squeezing my brain until it's about to explode, so I chose to come here to relax. Yuchi readily called out, Shin-yu, and then asked curiously, May I ask what do you do for a living? Shin-yu leaned back comfortably on the chair, naturally revealing the temperament of an aristocrat. He smiled faintly. Take a guess. Yuchi held her chin with one hand and frowned as if she was thinking hard. Then she suddenly realized. Shin-yu? This name is so familiar. Don't tell me you're the CEO of the Shin Group, Shin-yu? Shin-yu nodded slightly. Yuchi didn't believe him and asked, Ing City's richest man, the second young master of the Shin family. Shin-yu nodded again. That's right. Yuchi stirred the coffee uneasily. She looked embarrassed and her tone was a little flustered. I didn't expect to meet you here. Shin-yu's gaze turned cold. He automatically interpreted her behavior as a guilty conscience because her relationship with Shinja was still a secret. His lips moved. Just as he was about to speak, she suddenly stood up in a panic and said anxiously, I'm sorry, I suddenly remembered something important. I have to hurry back to the hotel. Shin-yu grabbed her wrist and stared at her with his deep eyes. There was some doubt in his expression. Yuchi, you seem to be afraid of me? No, I really have something to do. I have to go back. Please let go of me. This time, her expression became flustered, as if she had done something wrong. Awesome novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 900. Shin-yu narrowed his eyes. He was certain that she must be afraid that he would find out about her relationship with Shinja. He didn't expect that someone as smart as Shinja would find such a stupid woman who only had beauty but no brains. His mind raced as he tried to figure out how to pry Shinja's secret from her. Unexpectedly, a strong gust of wind rushed towards his cheek. He quickly dodged, but the furious fist still brushed past his cheek. The huge force made him lose his balance and his leg hit the chair next to him, making a loud noise and shocking the guests in the bar. Shinja's handsome figure stood in front of Shin-yu. He protected Yuchi behind him and stared at Shin-yu with his sharp eyes. His cold voice sent chills down Shin-yu's spine. I'm warning you, don't you dare have any ideas about Yuchi. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Shin-yu touched his cheek. He swore that it must be swollen. Damn it, he was just careless and got hit by that lunatic. Shin-yu retracted his hand hatefully. His malicious eyes flashed with a sinister light. It seems that your taste isn't very good. This woman can't even compare to Aisha. He took a step forward and leaned close to Shinja's ear. His low voice was cold. Do you still remember her? Cute little Aisha. Aisha? Yuchi had never heard of this name. She turned her head instinctively and looked at Shinja. She saw that his face was extremely gloomy and his deep eyes were surging with anger. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Shut up, you don't deserve to mention her name. Shin-yu stepped back and tidied up his clothes slowly. He said casually, Don't forget what happened to Aisha. He paused for a moment before shifting his gaze to Yuchi. A charming, gentlemanly smile appeared on his face. Yuchi, anyone who has anything to do with Shinja will never have a good ending. Why don't you consider throwing yourself into my arms? The corner of Yuchi's mouth twitched. She didn't want to talk to him, but she felt Shinja tighten his grip on her hand. She shook his hand back and raised her chin proudly. Sir, please call me Miss G. We're not familiar with each other. Of course, if you're willing to act like a younger brother, I'll allow you to call me sister-in-law. Shin-yu's eyes narrowed and he smiled sinisterly. I didn't expect you to have such a sharp tongue. Interesting, I suddenly feel like I'm starting to like you. The anger in Shinja's eyes intensified and a violent aura erupted from his body. He pulled Yuchi into his arms and announced in a domineering manner, Yuchi is my fiancé. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll consider making you unable to speak again. Chen Yu shrugged his shoulders and smiled gently. Alright, it's just a joke. Why are you so serious about it? I'm actually not interested in your baby at all. You know that I like women with big breasts and perky butts. Alright, you guys have fun. As he spoke, he reached out to pat Shinja's shoulder. Shinja hugged Yuchi and quickly dodged. The disgust in his eyes was undisguised. Yu didn't take it seriously. He shrugged his shoulders and called the waiter to settle the bill with great grace. Shinja's tense body only relaxed after his figure disappeared from the bar entrance. He held Yuchi's shoulder and frowned slightly. Did he hurt you? No, don't be nervous. Yuchi glanced at the people around and said softly, there are so many people here. Let's go back to the hotel. When they returned to the hotel, the first thing Shinja did was to wipe Yuchi's right wrist with a wet towel. Shinju had just touched that place. The man sitting in front of her lowered his eyebrows. Every movement was careful and careful, afraid of hurting her. She suddenly felt very guilty and whispered, I'm sorry. He was too fast just now and I didn't have time to avoid it. Shinja paused and looked up at her. There was no reproach on his handsome face and his gaze was very gentle. It's too dirty to be scratched by that kind of person. As if afraid that she would misunderstand, he hesitated and said, he has many women. Who knows if there are any germs on his hands? Yuchi's gloominess was swept away and she was almost amused by him. Ridiculing Shinju like this was really too ruthless. As expected of her, Shinja, oh so cute. I like him more and more. She stared at his handsome face with a burning gaze and a bold thought of kissing him suddenly appeared in her heart. Her heart moved at will. Since she liked him, why should she hide it? She suddenly threw herself into his arms. Because her movements were too fierce, she directly pushed him onto the sofa. She pressed him under her body and wrapped her arms around his neck. Her clear black and white eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky, flickering with an enchanting flame that made people gasp in admiration. Chi. Shoo, don't talk. She raised a finger and placed it on his lips. She lowered her head slightly and kissed his forehead. Her soft lips slowly moved downwards like a beautiful butterfly, lightly resting on his thin lips. His Chi, for the first time, took the initiative. Shinja happily hugged her tightly. Even if she wanted to go back on her words, it was already too late. He took the initiative and his wet and hot tongue drilled into her mouth, extremely gentle. After a while, she laid on his chest and her slightly swollen red lips rubbed against his cheek. She whispered in his ear, Asha, I love you so much. This was the first time she had said those words seriously. Shinja's heart melted. He suddenly understood why it was said in the books that couples liked to say those words to each other. It was because it was a wonderful feeling. It was as if he suddenly had the whole world and his heart was filled with joy. He didn't care about the prosperity of the world and only wanted to be with her until the end of time. He hugged her tightly, as if he wanted to rub her into his body and never separate again. He kissed her hair and she obediently laid in his arms. The atmosphere was so warm and sweet. She really wanted to stay like this forever, hugging each other. Unfortunately, that was not realistic. Shinja suddenly heard a strange gulu-gulu sound. He could not help but laugh. He kissed her forehead and said dotingly, Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Yuchi's cheeks flushed red. She pouted and said, Don't laugh at me. I haven't eaten Japanese food in a long time. How about we eat Japanese food? It was pointless to ask this question. As long as she liked it, Shinja would never reject it. After asking the hotel staff about the nearest Japanese restaurant, Shinja drove her out. Yuchi sneaked a glance at Shinja, who was driving seriously. Her fingers scratched the seat. She had many questions in her heart. She really wanted to ask, but she was worried that it would bring back sad memories. She was really conflicted. Shinja had already noticed her little movements. He helplessly raised the corner of his lips and said gently, Is there anything you want to ask? Yuchi's eyes lit up. Can I? Shinja smiled dotingly. There's no need for secrets between us. Ask whatever you want. She asked carefully, Ajay, can you tell me who Aisha is? She noticed that when she asked this question, Shinja's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The atmosphere suddenly froze. She was very uneasy and thought that she had stepped on a minefield. She hurriedly said, It's okay. It's okay if you don't want to tell me. I'm just a little curious. I won't think too much, really. Ouch. She felt like slapping herself. Wasn't this just giving herself away? She laughed dryly. She was so annoyed that she did not dare to look at him. He would definitely think that she was a petty woman. Chi-Chi, Ji-Yuchi responded in a muffled voice. She turned her head out of the car window and did not look at him. She was angry at her own clumsiness. There was a hint of helplessness and a hint of heaviness in his tone. It's not that I don't want to tell you. I'm just thinking about how to say it. Ji-Yuchi turned around and looked at him in a daze. He reached out and stroked her hair comfortingly. He quickly retracted his hand and looked ahead. It was as if he was looking back through the sky outside the car window. He slowly said, Before I turned 18, I lived in the Shen family. At that time, only 3 people were good to me. One was Uncle Lin, the other was the driver, Uncle Zhao, and the last one was Uncle Zhao's daughter, Aisha. Aisha was 2 years younger than me. She was very lively and liked to play with me. At that time, I hated women. I didn't even treat Aisha well. However, she didn't give up and kept calling me brother behind my back. At this point, he pursed his lips and looked terrible. Later, I don't know where Xinyu heard the rumors that Aisha liked me. He started to pursue Aisha, causing her to distance herself from me. After half a year, he finally got her. Not long after, I went abroad. Later, I heard that Aisha had aborted a child because of him. Of course, he couldn't marry her. Shinja gripped the steering wheel tightly. His knuckles were slightly white and his face was frighteningly cold. He slowly told the story. In the end, Aisha slit her wrist and committed suicide. Before she died, she gave me a call. She said, Brother Shinja, Xinyu has never loved me. He pursued me because he wanted to take away what belonged to you. His eyes were cold and fierce. He said word by word, Since we were young, he liked to take away my things. I don't care about other things, but Aisha is innocent. So I hate him. Ji-Yuchi had long known that Xinyu's character was bad, but she didn't know it was bad to this extent. She cursed Xinyu in her heart for being shameless. She felt vexed and said guiltily, I'm sorry. I didn't expect things to be like this. If she had known, she would never have asked. Because of her curiosity, she brought up Shinja's sad story. She felt that she was too much. The past is the past. I've already let it go. Why do you have to take it to heart? Shinja caressed her cheek and said gently, I know what you're worried about, Chi-Chi. In my life, you're the only woman. There was no one else in the past and there won't be anyone else in the future. Aisha was just a little sister to me. I have to bear some responsibility for her death. I feel sorry for her, but I don't love her. Do you understand? Welfare, Shinwu 799. Chapter 901. His heartfelt words made Ji-Yuchi both moved and embarrassed. Her clear black and white eyes stared at him. You are also my one and only. In the future, I will never let my imagination run wild again. Good girl. Just then, the car arrived at the destination. Shinja stopped the car by the roadside, leaned close to her, kissed the corner of her lips, and then took her into his arms. His fingers tightened around her, and his voice was calm. Xinyu is very dangerous. No matter what method he uses to get close to you, don't believe him. I originally wanted to get some information from him today, so I agreed to have tea with him. In the future, I will definitely stay as far away from him as possible. Xinyu was a proud and arrogant person who always looked down on women. So just now, she deliberately showed a very stupid look, making him completely uninterested. That way, he would not care about her. Shinja rubbed her hair in appreciation. That's right. In the future, stay away from him. If he comes close to you again, tell me immediately. I will help you beat him up. Xinyu, who was despised by the two of them, was currently in the hotel with Anna. Of course, Anna was not his secretary, but one of his lovers. After a while, Anna coquettishly leaned into Shin Yu's embrace, her fingertips drawing circles on his chest. She acted coquettishly. "Darling, have you taken a fancy to that woman?" "Which woman?" Shin Yu's eyes were cold, and his cold handsome face was dyed with a stern look. Unfortunately, Anna did not sense the danger at all, and said to herself, "It's the woman I met at the entrance of the bar. Although she looks passable, her figure is too bad, like a washboard." She rattled on and on about Jiuqi's shortcomings. Shen Yu's face grew darker and darker, almost as dark as the bottom of a pot. He abruptly pushed her away and got off the ground. He tied the towel around his waist and coldly said, "Go back to your country immediately and never appear in front of me again." Anna was startled. She did not care that she was not wearing anything and immediately jumped down to hug him tightly. She repeatedly said, "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I will never ask about those women again. Please, don't drive me away." Scram. Shin Yu violently pushed her away. She screamed and fell to the ground. Her jade body was sprawled across the ground, giving her a different kind of charm. But Shin Yu only coldly swept a glance at her and curled his lips in ridicule. To him, women were only used to vent his lust. He would allow smart women to stay by his side for a while longer. As for stupid women, of course he would throw them away as soon as possible. He pulled out his arm mercilessly, and his eyes were like a venomous snake's. "Don't make me say it again. Get back to your country right now." Anna was shocked by his fierce eyes. She was just a small actress who wanted to use Shin Yu to climb up the ranks. She didn't expect to be dumped by him after only being with him for half a month. How could she be reconciled? She covered her face and cried. Her mouth kept saying things like, "I love you so much, don't abandon me." Shen Yu sneered and nodded. "Good, very good, you don't have to leave." Anna was secretly delighted and cried even harder. She played the role of a woman who was deeply in love with someone who was tortured. Shen Yu looked at her with disdain and turned to walk into the living room. Soon, Anna heard him talking on the phone. 13, come to my room." 13 was a tall man wearing a black suit. His face was like a poker card, without the slightest expression. He respectfully bowed to Shin Yu. "Mister, what are your orders?" Shen Yu raised his chin in Anna's direction and lightly said, "That woman is yours. You can do whatever you want with her." 13's calm eyes immediately lit up. He was like a ferocious wolf that had caught its prey. A dangerous aura came from him as he walked towards Anna with steady steps. Anna was stunned. She even forgot to cry. She uneasily retreated and shook her head in panic. No, Mr. Shen, I'm willing to return to my country. I'll return to my country immediately." Shin Yu turned his head and revealed a nasty smile. "Unfortunately, it's too late." "No, Mr. Shen, I beg you, let me go. It's my fault. I'll leave immediately and never appear in front of you again." Anna, whose wrist was being held by 13, screamed out in pain. Shin Yu frowned in disgust. 13, gag her mouth and take her away immediately." 13 responded and fiercely hit Anna on the back of her neck. She softly collapsed in his arms. He picked her up horizontally and quickly disappeared through the door. 13 had a tyrannical tendency and was very good at playing with women. He once played with the daughter of a triad leader to death. He was chased everywhere. It was Shin Yu who saved him. In order to repay Shin Yu, he became his personal bodyguard. Although 13 had restrained himself in recent years, his methods were still very cruel. Even if Anna wasn't killed by him, a layer of skin would be peeled off. This was the consequence of disobeying Shin Yu. He expressionlessly glanced at the messy bedroom and walked into the bathroom bare-chested. In the afternoon, it was already night in China. The big screen hanging on the wall was connected and projected Shin Jianhao's figure. His face was very similar to Shin Yu's. He frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Ah, you're too mischievous. How can you take a vacation just like that? A lot of people in the company are watching you." Shen Yu's upper body was naked and a towel was wrapped around his waist. He leaned against the back of the chair and wiped his hair with a towel in his hand. He lazily said, "Dad, I'm not joking. Do you know why I chose Hawaii? It's because my good brother is here." He deliberately dragged out the words, "good brother." Sure enough, he saw Shen Jianhao's face change color. Humph, didn't that bastard say he was discussing business abroad? Why did he run to Hawaii? Shen Yu sneered, "What business? The business was settled 2 days ago. He's using the business as an excuse to go on a date with a woman." Shen Jianhao frowned. "Is it that little girl from the Ji family?" "Yes, her name is Ji Yuqi, the most precious daughter of the CEO of the Ji Group. I can see that Shinja likes her very much." A sharp light flashed in Shen Yu's eyes and his lips curled into an evil smile. "Dad, what do you think if I steal his precious woman?" Shen Jianhao was very satisfied with his second son. The only thing he didn't like was that his private life was too messy. Fortunately, it wasn't a big problem and he never interfered. However, when his second son interfered in Shinja's relationship, he still had some concerns. He disagreed. "Since you know that he treasures that woman very much, why do you deliberately provoke him? He's not that weak youth who has nothing." Shen Jianhao thought about how after Shinja returned to China, he quickly implemented several new policies and replaced a large number of middle and high-level management in the Shin Group. He and Yu were exhausted and had a headache. Shen Yu touched his cheek where Shinja had punched him and sneered, "It's because of this that I want to step on his sore spot." He still clearly remembered how sad Shinja was when he found out about Isha's death. Even if Shinja armed himself with indifference, the memory of his heavy punch on the tombstone and the bleeding back of his hand was still fresh in Shen Yu's mind. Shen Jianhao shook his head and reminded, "Be careful not to step on his sore spot. Instead, he'll cripple your feet." "Dad, in your eyes, am I so useless that I can't compare to that madman?" Even in front of his father, Shen Yu didn't shy away from calling Shinja a madman. In the eyes of everyone in the Shen family, Shinja was a madman. Shinja was in poor health when he was young and often fell ill. Once he fell ill, he was like a different person. No, to be precise, he was like a dangerous beast. He kicked and bit anyone who came close to him. Shinja's appearance was similar to Shen Jianhao's deceased ex-wife. His face always reminded Shen Jianhao of the ugly things he had done in the past. In addition, Tao Shirin always spoke ill of Shinja in his ear. Gradually, he began to hate Shinja. It was too late to avoid him, so why would he investigate why Shinja went crazy when he fell ill? It only made him hate Shinja more. Shen Jianhao recalled Shinja's crazy appearance when he was young. His brows were tightly knitted together as he unhappily said, "Don't mention that unfilial son again. Whenever he's mentioned, my heart feels uncomfortable." Yu, instead of dealing with a woman, I advise you to focus on the company's affairs. "I know, Dad. I know what I'm doing." "Well, I won't talk to you anymore. It's already very late in the country. You should rest early." After cutting off the conversation, Shen Yu threw his whole body into the soft sofa and threw the towel on the coffee table. His slender fingers tapped on the sofa's armrest. He picked up the phone and dialed a number. He said in fluent English, "Find a few people to help me do something." The night on the island was very charming. The bright lights shrouded the sapphire-like sea. The bars on the coast were colorful and lively. Although Shen Yu's purpose was unknown, it did not affect Ji Yuqi's mood of vacation. She and Shinja interlocked their fingers and happily strolled on the beach. They danced with the enthusiastic locals and their laughter flew in the night. Just as they were returning to the hotel and passing by a bar, 6 or 7 foreign men dressed like hooligans rushed out of the hotel and blocked their way. Among the group, 2 people pointed at each other's noses and cursed. Some of the other people were watching a good show and some tried to persuade them to stop. However, the 2 people who were cursing at each other seemed to be angry. Not only did they not stop cursing, but it escalated to a fight of fists and feet. The scene was instantly chaotic. The people on both sides were in a melee. They took out their weapons one after another. Daggers, electric batons, and even beer bottles were taken out. They were fighting fiercely. Shenja was worried about being affected. He hugged Jiyuchi's waist tightly and planned to pass by. At this moment, someone in the group of people who were fighting suddenly shouted in English, "Stop fighting! Isn't it just for a woman? Everyone look, there's a beautiful Asian girl over there." Beauty novel, Song Shu 566. Chapter 902. As soon as these words came out, the people fighting stopped and turned their eyes to Jiyuchi. Although Shenja blocked her and they couldn't see her face, her graceful figure was enough to make men daydream. Someone immediately echoed, "Don't let that chick run away. You Asian man, put that chick down and I'll spare your life." A burly man holding a dagger raised his chin and stared at Shenja in disdain. Shenja didn't want to meddle in other people's business, but he didn't expect trouble to come knocking on his door. He coldly glanced at those people and spat out a word, "Get lost. F***ck, I'm going to get that chick today." The man roughly spat and waved his dagger as he pounced forward. Shenja protected Jiyuchi and took a step back. He stretched out his long leg and kicked the man away. Another two men pounced forward. They didn't see how Shenja made his move and the two men flew out one after another. A bearded man quietly came from behind, intending to grab Jiyuchi to threaten Shenja. Unexpectedly, Shenja's eyes were like torches and had already seen through his trick. He said with a calm face, "Chi-Chi, lower your head." Jiyuchi quickly lowered her head. Shenja's fist brushed past her head and hit the bearded man's chin. Jiyuchi clearly heard the sound of bones breaking. The bearded man held his chin and screamed in pain. The others weren't any better. They were all injured and lying on the floor, groaning and groaning. A man among the wounded quietly took out a silencer and aimed it at Shenja's head. Jiyuchi followed Shenja and walked for a distance. She inadvertently looked back and saw the black muzzle of a gun. The blood in her body suddenly turned cold. "Be careful." Her voice became sharp because of the urgency. At the same time, she shook off Shenja's arm and blocked his back as fast as she could. Bang! A gunshot sounded. Shenja's heart almost stopped. He quickly turned around and held Jiyuchi in his arms, exposing his entire back to the killer's shooting range. He didn't care about his own safety. His body slightly trembled from fear and his eyes were filled with panic. He anxiously called out, "Chi-Chi? I'm fine, don't worry." Jiyuchi's heart was filled with fear. At that moment, she really thought she was dead. She didn't expect that before the killer could pull the trigger, a bullet would shoot out of nowhere and hit the killer's forehead. "Ah, someone's dead. Run!" The group of injured people lying on the ground got up in a hurry and scattered as fast as they could. Soon, only a corpse was left behind. It was the man who wanted to assassinate Shenja. He was lying on the ground with a hole in his forehead. Blood was gurgling out of the hole. He was still holding a pistol in his hand. His eyes that had lost their luster were staring straight at Shenja's direction. A man in a black trench coat walked out of the alley majestically. He was tall and straight and his face was cold and indifferent. He said in a deep voice, "Young master, Ah Ling has already chased after those who escaped. Maybe we can get some information from them." Shenja nodded slightly. "Ah Zhe, your marksmanship is not bad. Thank you for just now." If Ah Zhe hadn't hidden in the surroundings to protect him and Yuchi, he would have shot the killer and Yuchi would have been injured. If that had happened, he would never be able to forgive himself. Ah Zhe had followed Shenja for so many years, but this was the first time he heard the words, "thank you" from him. His lips curved stiffly. One look and one could tell that he wasn't used to smiling. The tips of his ears were tinged with a faint shade of red. He coughed and said, "This is what I should do. Young master, you don't have to be so polite." After Ah Zhe appeared, Jiyuchi withdrew from Shenja's arms. However, he insisted on holding her hand. She smiled sincerely. "Ah Zhe, I also want to thank you. If it wasn't for your godly marksmanship, I probably wouldn't be able to stand and talk to you." Ah Zhe's ears turned even redder. His eyes flickered. "Miss G is too polite. If the two of you don't have any orders, I'd better hide in the dark." On the balcony of the hotel, A man in a shirt and trousers stood in the night sky. He held a pair of binoculars in his hand and took in the fighting on the street. He snorted coldly. Wilson's men are really useless. 7 of them can't even defeat a lunatic. Behind him stood the cold-faced bodyguard, 13. Second young master, if you want to take Shinja's life, why don't you let me do it? 13 was very confident in his skills. He was one of the top assassins in Asia. Shen Yu tossed the binoculars to him and said calmly, I don't want to take his life now. I asked Wilson to find those good-for-nothings to play the hero saving the damsel in distress. Unfortunately, the people Wilson found were too useless. They were all killed in seconds by Shinja before it was my turn. If the plan succeeded, Jiuchi would see the man she liked being beaten down by others. She was about to be humiliated. At this time, Shin Yu descended from the sky and saved her like a god. How could she not be moved by him? Shen Yu's lips curled up in ridicule. Those foolish and ignorant women, chasing after love was only because the other party could satisfy their vanity and satisfy their dreams of becoming a hero. They liked powerful men. Where was there any true love? Just as Shin Yu sneered at women, Shinja and Jiuchi had already returned to the hotel. The eldest young master, who had been holding back for a long time, finally exploded. He let go of Jiuchi's hand with a cold face and left her alone. He opened the door without a word. Jiuchi was like a wronged little wife, pitifully following behind him. When he walked to the bedroom, she followed. When he went to the cloakroom to get a bathrobe, she followed. When he went into the bathroom, she also wanted to follow. The eldest young master blocked her at the door with a cold face. He exuded an air of, I'm very unhappy, and said coldly, Why are you following me? The eldest young master, who was throwing a tantrum, was finally willing to talk to her. Jiuchi was so touched that tears streamed down her face. She quickly reached out and grabbed his sleeve. She pouted pitifully and said softly, Aja, don't be angry. I was wrong. Don't ignore me. The little woman in front of him stared at him with her big watery eyes. Her red lips were pouted, and her expression was pitiful. Shinja's heart softened. However, when he thought of the dangerous situation just now, his expression became uglier. He said coldly, You still know that you were wrong. Tell me, what did you do wrong? Jiuchi blinked her big eyes and said softly, I shouldn't have stood in front of you when you were in danger. Shinja's face was still stiff. He said in a deep voice, You know that you were wrong? You're not allowed to do such dangerous things in the future. No matter when, as long as you're in danger, all you have to do is protect yourself. Do you hear me? This was the first time he had spoken to her in such a strict tone. She didn't feel sad or angry, but she felt her heart ache. She clearly knew that when he had hugged her, his body had trembled slightly. That was the fear of losing her. She was also afraid of losing him, so how could she only care about protecting herself when he was in danger? Even though he didn't get the answer he wanted, Shinja didn't give up. He stubbornly stared into her eyes, as if he wanted to see through her organs and intimidate her soul. He was in a deadlock with her at the bathroom door just for an answer, or rather, a promise. Jiuchi bit her lips and suddenly threw herself into his arms. She leaned her head against his chest and said slowly, If you're in danger, I can't turn a blind eye to it. Shinja's body stiffened. Just as he was about to say something, she raised her head and covered his mouth with her hand. She continued, Don't be anxious. Let me finish. Aja, I want to face the danger with you. I want to stand by your side. I don't want to be a naive little girl who is well protected by you. However, I promise that I won't be so rash again. I'm done. If you're still angry, you can scold me. Her clear eyes were filled with uneasiness. She was like a child who had done something wrong and was waiting for her parents to criticize her. His feelings were very complicated. He had always known that she was different from ordinary people. He could tolerate and give her the greatest freedom in other things, but when it came to her personal safety, he couldn't easily compromise. He was silent for a moment and slowly pushed her away from his arms. He said, I can't agree. I'm a man. I don't need my woman to protect me from danger. She tugged at his sleeve. Aju, get out. I'm going to take a shower. He pulled his sleeve out of her hand and stroked her hair. His tone was very gentle and his expression could be said to be gentle, but she just felt that he was angry. The sound of water splashing could be heard from the bathroom. Ji-Yuchi was a little frustrated as she rolled around on the bed. What was wrong with her wanting to protect the person she loved? But he wasn't wrong either. He also wanted to protect her, so whose fault was it? Ji-Yuchi lay on her side, facing the window. Before she knew it, the corners of her eyes were wet. She hurriedly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and laughed self-deprecatingly. Shinja really spoiled her rotten. She actually started to cry like a delicate girl. This was a bad habit. She had to change it. However, she didn't expect that Shinja had already seen her wiping her tears. Shinja stood at the head of the bed. Because of his height, even though Ji-Yuchi's back was facing him, he could still see her secretly wiping her tears. His heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. It was so uncomfortable that it was about to explode. He clenched his fingers and gripped the towel in his hand tightly. His expression was as cold as an iceberg. Back then, when she said, "Shinja, let's be together," he felt that the whole world was bright. He only had one thought in his heart, which was to love her and treat her well. He couldn't let her cry anymore. But now, he still made her cry. Awesome novel. Song Shu 566. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.